Let's be honest, we've all found ourselves raging at a referee's decision at some stage. This feel familiar?
That is an absolutely shocking decision.
They've got a case in that it was a bad decision.
It's such a poor decision.
Yeah, I think he's just made a bad decision in that instance.
But what does it take to get to the very top of football refereeing? Every referee starts with their county FA. It's a simple training course and you can take it as soon as you hit your 14th birthday. Once you've done that, you have to go through at least 11 hours of face-to-face training. You'll then graduate as a Level 7 official, which means you can take charge of county-level games. But hold your horses, there's still a long way to go to get to the Premier League. Your next step is to spend a year each at Levels 6, 5 and 4. This covers the top of the amateur game. Only at Level 3 do you start doing Northern Counties or Isthmian League level games, for example. If you've done this all quickly, you can reach Level 2 and ref your first National League match after, oh, I don't know, 6 years? After getting enough experience at that level, you can apply to be a referee in the EFL. There's an interview, people watching you do games, and then, if the EFL are happy, you'll be granted a Level 1 licence to ref in games in League 2 and above. Now, they don't just say on you go to the Premier League, you have to work your way up through the divisions. Only after years of hard work and refereeing on cold Tuesday nights in Stoke can you be considered to do matches in some of Europe's very best stadiums. Now, who was the youngest to reach the very top? It was actually Michael Oliver. He refed his first Premier League match in 2010 at the tender age of just 25. So if you want to follow in his footsteps, crack on. It'll only take you roughly a decade, thousands of hours of work and an incredibly thick skin. In total, there are 37,000 registered referees across England, but the PGMOL has only deemed 21 good enough for the top flight. That means there's not even a 1 in 1,000 chance you'll even make it in. Obviously, referees can make mistakes, but when you think about it, having a go at them is kind of like slating a brain surgeon.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and welcome to what I think is a historic, never mind just a very important, but a very historic edition of Trans-Europe Express. I'll explain that in just a second. It is, of course, your weekly fix of football news from across the continent and indeed across the globe. I'm Danny Kelly, as always, and with me, in a very real sense tonight, is football guru, and without whom this show just doesn't work, Andy Brassell. And this is why the show is so important tonight, Andy's here in my house. He's at Kelly Castle in Kilkenny. He's upstairs, I'm downstairs. I can see him grinning there in my wife's office. They said it couldn't be done. talkSPORT warned us that this was technologically beyond anything that had been tried since the landing on the moon. And I said, no, give it a go. I think we can do it. And using some bits of sticking plaster, and Andy has a very large pipe wrench, we've managed to get it going. You're listening to Trans-Europe Express, where you'll be hearing all the major stories from across the continent. Mbappe Watch, and it's an El Clásico special. We'll talk about that La Liga fixture in Miami being cancelled. Reviewing all the European competitions that happened last week. Tim Vickery will join us from South America, and Brian Sciaretta from the US will join us to talk about Lionel Messi's new contract. So there you have it. Trans-Europe Express, live on your radio. Both of us coming from Kelly Castle in Kilkenny. Welcome, one and all. Before we hear from Andy, let me just tell you about our poll tonight, because it's fantastic. Given that it's the El Clásico, which will come on to in just a few seconds' time, if you could just pick one player for your team from the following quartet, who would it be? And the question that the people who got involved are Jude Bellingham, Kylian Mbappe, Lamine Yamal, or Pedri. You can have one of those for your team. Bellingham, Mbappe, Yamal, or Pedri? Go to it's a Twitter, it's an X poll. So go to at talkSPORT, at Danny Kelly Words, or Andy Brassell, 2 S's and 2 L's. As I say, and you can vote in that poll. I better say hello to Andy to prove that he's here and that technology is working. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm well, Danny. How are you? I feel like 20% more chair dancing is just happening just by being in Kelly Castle.
Absolutely, and I should say Andy's family are here as well. Bless them, all locked away in my kitchen to make sure that they keep the dog from barking. Yes, I know it's very domestic. I know it's very prosaic, but it's the character that makes this program the award winner it is today. Welcome along, everybody, to Trans Europa Express, but we'll start with this.
Carrière, le Paris Saint-Germain, Mbappé! Mbappé!
Little give and go, Mbappe's in! Oh, it's 2-2! He scored twice in 2 minutes!
Tête de Kylian Mbappé. Allez, Kylian!
Of course, John Jackson will keep you up to date with the Formula One Grand Prix from Mexico. Andy will give you score updates from Rayo Vallecano, Lazio and Lyon, who are playing Alvarez, Juventus and Strasbourg, respectively. But first, let's start with, it's only finished in the last hour or two. Andy and I watched it together. Real Madrid 2, Barcelona 1. And Andy, we'll go on to Mbappe straight away, but we should say a pretty old school Clásico this, which replaced the competitiveness that we've got used to with downright spite at times.
Yeah, and, you know, some would argue that's possibly a good thing. Some would argue that's inevitable due to the build-up and particularly the words that
which we'll get on to,
beforehand. But you could argue that it's a bit of a shock as Real Madrid won 2-1, deservedly so, to make sure they made the most of their home advantage, to get themselves 5 points clear at the top of the league, which even at this early stage is a pretty big thing, especially as Barcelona would have come into this season as a big title favourites for a lot of people, especially people who saw them regularly in the Champions League last season, in the Champions League knockout rounds, and enjoyed watching them play so much. Though quite how good they are, I know you have some views on that, and we'll get onto that in a second.
Yeah, we will.
But I think that the fact as well, if we look at recent Clásico history, and particularly last season, they played each other 4 times last season, and Real Madrid lost all of them and conceded a ton of goals, which was something that punctuated the whole feeling of their season. You know, when we've talked before about this is Mbappe watch after all, that statistically, Kylian Mbappe had a really great debut season at Real Madrid, but it didn't feel like that because they won nothing, because they were humiliated in the Champions League by Arsenal, and because they were beaten 4 times by Barcelona. I think that is maybe the biggest thing, in fact.
Absolutely. But Andy, you know, not only were they beaten 4 times by Barcelona, they lost 4, 3, 5 and 4 goals in those games, 16 goals. So you're absolutely right. Every time Real Madrid, across the entire spectrum of competitions, start to get up ahead of steam, they got whacked by Barcelona. It's 1 step forward and 2 steps back. So that's why this result is so important. It puts a stop to what had become a very, very nasty habit. Mbappe, of course, was the centre of the action. His great scoring run had come to an end after he didn't score against Juventus, but he did score tonight. Yeah,
that's right. Well, he scored a brilliant goal first off and then was mildly offside. I don't know, you can't say slightly offside, can you? It just doesn't make any sense. He was offside, and a brilliant goal was disallowed, but shortly after that he got the opener. Barcelona equalised somewhat against the run of play, because even though they had loads of the ball, they didn't really create that much, I think it's fair to say, over the extent of the game. You thought they might change things up at half-time and find a way, but they didn't. Real Madrid got their noses back in front deservedly before the end of the half, and Jude Bellingham got what turned out to be the winner. And, you know, we're talking about Mbappe, great week for Jude Bellingham, not just the winner against Juventus, but as well the winner in El Clásico. Of course, he's been there before. He scored the winner in his first Clásico, going back to Montjuic a couple of years ago. And it feels great, I think, for Jude Bellingham to be back in a good place. Now, look, a lot of people will have seen, if they've just seen the goal or the highlights of his performance against Juventus, don't sleep on him, because he was so good. He was so good in the Juventus game, and he was brilliant today. He was absolutely
Before he
fantastic
scored today, we were already saying, "Well, Bellingham really is at it." That was before he scored the goal.
Totally, and I think really it's the result of his positioning. Actually, they've found a way. Now, I think it was always going to be. We always talked about, and we've talked about this before, but we always focused on, and everyone always focused on, how would Mbappe and Bellingham coexist? That was never the right answer, really, never the right question, really, because actually the real question was, how would Mbappe and Bellingham coexist? Because he was a de facto centre forward or a false nine for a lot of his first year, and he was asked to do something completely different. And part of how he built his strength of personality and his popularity, his enormous popularity with the crowd at the Bernabeu, was due to the fact that he did that, and he didn't quite feel like himself for a lot of last season. Now, what they've managed to do in the last couple of games, this started at Getafe last weekend, they've got him in a place where he can take up lots of advanced positions. And I know you can say the winning goal against Juventus is just a tap in that you can't miss after brilliant play by Vinicius Junior, which is true. But what's also true is he's in that position to score the goal because
he could miss it if he was 20 yards away, couldn't he? Yeah,
exactly.
That's the whole point.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it was
the same today. The same today.
And when they've got him clicking and ticking, it is noticeable that he turns up in those positions more often. It's not a question of him shying away. The better he plays, the more he turns up in those positions. Vinicius also had a good game while he was on the pitch. But I suppose part of the build-up to the terrible bad feeling we saw at the end of the game was that Vinicius, he shouldn't do this. He's a top player. But, sometimes you get subbed off for tactical reasons. He had a face on him like a wasp had eaten a bulldog.
Yeah, that's right. It's a weekend of celebrity moaners getting substituted, as we'll come back to at various points during the show. But yeah, he was taken off, and I think it was fair enough. Now, look, Xabi Alonso, as he always does, was very sensible about this afterwards, and he said, "Yeah, I saw how he reacted. We're going to enjoy this, and we'll talk about it later." Like, we're not going to talk about that now and let it get in the way. But of course, lots of what happened today started, A, because Barcelona was second best, B, because Barcelona were losing, C, because Pedri gets sent off for a second yellow, quite rightly, because chasing his own bad touch, which is something that we can very rarely say about him because he's just such a great midfield player, maybe the best in his position in the world, got him sent off. And
but it all started, Andy, before the game even kicked off.
It did, exactly. It did. And a lot of people were questioning the validity, the point of Lamine Yamal coming out and saying that Real Madrid are always on the make and always playing for fouls and always cheating, really, is what he said. And look, there was no doubt, especially after and we'll come to it in a bit, the week of public speaking that various Madrid players have had, that they would want to bite back on.
Some of it very positive for the game, but Lamau here, if you start with all that, you've got to win the match, haven't you?
Yeah, you have. And honestly, I like it about him. There's this debate in Spain about, is he going off the rails? Of course he's not going off the rails. He's an 18-year-old of enormous talent who wants to have a bit of chip about him as well. And to be the player we want him to be, he needs to have a bit of chip about him. And he probably needs moments like this, where at the end you had Vinicius and Carvajal going, "You need to keep your mouth shut in future. Let's hear you talk more." And that led to a bit of afters on the touchline. Look, as soon as you saw Antonio
Rudiger... A bit of afters, Andy. There were 6 yellow cards and a red.
There was.
A bit of afters.
Andre Lunin, the reserve goalkeeper for Real Madrid, he was showing a red card. But, as soon as you saw Antonio Rudiger on the touchline, you thought, okay, we know what's coming next, don't you? Well, a man who is dangerous in street clothes. And talking of street clothes, Rafinha was very keen to get involved as well.
I will say, though, there is still great fun because the way club and international football intertwine. Watching the captain of Spain giving plenty of grief to Spain's greatest player currently was fun abundant, I think is fair to say.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it was lovely to watch. Andy, just give us quickly the three scores from the games that are going on now. Then I'll take us over to the Grand Prix in Mexico.
So in France, is Lyon 1, Strasbourg 1. Strasbourg took the lead through a brilliant striker, Joaquin Paniquet, in the first half. Diving header, lots of diving headers at the moment. And we had an equaliser for Lyon, an own goal by Doucouré, who's just completed a sensational hat-trick of own goal, penalty given away, which was subsequently missed by Corentin Tolisso, and sending off, because he's just been sent off for a challenge on Malek Fofana, which was pretty awful, and which has seen Fofana stretch it off on the little cart. It's still Lazio 1, Juventus 0 in Rome, which is another setback for Juventus after a lot of them recently. Toma Basic scored that goal for Lazio in the first half, and in Madrid, Rayo 0, Alaves 0.
Yeah, and listen, let me tell you, next up we'll be doing this huge story about the Spanish League game that was due to be played in Miami. It's no longer going to happen there, and that's largely down to the efforts of professional footballers. Before that, though, we need to get back to the Mexican Grand Prix. They're well over halfway now. Watching for talkSPORT, John Jackson.
Yeah, 15 laps to go. Lando Norris leads by 25.5 seconds over Charles Leclerc, but the battle between the third-place driver, Max Verstappen, with Ollie Behrman just behind him in fourth, and then George Russell sandwiching Oscar Piastri, the championship leader, as we go into this race with his teammate Kimi Antonelli, is fascinating. Max Verstappen running third then. His soft tyres are 16 laps old. Haas have then brought Ollie Behrman in, which has made Max Verstappen go up to third. So they've basically gambled a podium to give Ollie Behrman tyres that they think he can chase Max Verstappen down with. They're banking on Max Verstappen's tyres wearing out. If Ollie Behrman gets on that podium, that'll be his first ever podium in Formula One. Then you've got Oscar Piastri trying to rescue a dismal weekend for him. He's currently sixth in between George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, and he's going to have to try and get any points he can here, because with Lando Norris 26 seconds ahead now, it's not looking like his weekend, and it looks like Lando Norris will end the weekend as the championship leader.
Thank you very much indeed, John. More from John as that race heads towards the finishing line. Next here on Trans Europe Express, how the players have headed off the Spanish FA's plans to play overseas. That's next on Trans Europe Express. Yeah, no, look, of course we started with the Clásico. It's the biggest thing happening tonight. But the biggest story in European football, certainly in my mind the most important of the last 7 days, is the news that the game in Miami, proposed by the Spanish FA and railroaded through by UEFA, between, it doesn't matter who it's between because it's not going to happen now. Villarreal and Barcelona were going to play there. Andy, it's off, and
it is.
It's off largely because the leading players in Spain have spoken out against it very strongly. But even it was controversial when it was announced, but even its cancellation turned out to be controversial, at least the way it was done.
Yeah, it did. And look, it felt as if pressure was building because if we go back to last weekend, it's something we talked about.
Yes, for people who've been very ill or just got out of prison in the last 7 days, just run through again a timeline of this, please.
Yeah, and I think we should go back to last week's Trans Europe Express as well, where we were talking about the fact that there were protests before every La Liga game, players refusing to play for the first 15 seconds.
Amazing.
And this is what it comes down to, really. I don't even know if it's the concept itself, but the lack of player consideration and consultation.
Yeah.
And players, I think, obviously, when we're talking about something like this, it affects the culture, the habits, the lifestyle and the rights of fans. So that should always be our starting point when a game is taken out of its natural situation, if you like. But if we're going to see any change, it's become clear in the last week that the players are going to affect it. Not just because in every one of those games where they didn't kick about for the first 15 seconds, the world feed from La Liga, of course, just did an outside shot of the stadium. It didn't show the game not happening, which is an incredibly powerful image. You know, the 22 players just standing there at the beginning of a high-intensity match, not doing anything. 15 seconds is a very long time for that to happen. And then off the back of that, you had Real Madrid have had their words about it, but some of their big players came out and had words about it. Now, these are some of the words from Thibaut Courtois, who's never short of an opinion, who said La Liga does whatever it wants because it suits them. This decision distorts the competition. Playing the same is not the same as playing away. And obviously Barcelona would be losing an away game. If they'd have gone to the States, it would have been a stadium full of mainly Barcelona fans.
It'd have been a neutral game at the very worst, yes. Exactly.
Yes, Villarreal away is tough. It's not fair to change the rules mid-season without consulting us. Hiding the protests and trying to change the narrative is censorship and manipulation. They've been doing this for a while. I've already said I've never seen a president speak the way he does. It was interesting because we know that Thibaut Courtois is a big fan of US sports as well. So obviously he anticipated a lot of people saying, well, what about the NFL games abroad? What about the NBA games abroad, the regular season NBA games abroad? And he said, the NBA has 82 games. The NFL's owners collectively approve these decisions. Here, La Liga acts unilaterally. It's not the same. We also had Dani Carvajal.
Andy, this is the point I was going to make. Courtois is an outsider in that he's an overseas player, and he's a known big mouth, if you like to put it that way.
Yes.
Carvajal is along with Morata, I guess, is the senior player in Spain. So for him to come out and, let's say what he said, because I think this was really important.
Yeah, so this was an Instagram story that started, Hola, Senor Javier Tebas, so directed straight to Javier Tebas, the president
straight to Tebas' head, as we say in reggae music, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And he said failing to comply with the regulations is adulterating the competition. You can say whatever you like about the RMTV video, so the Real Madrid TV videos that have complained about refs and compiled decisions that I think are against them, but you cannot overlook the fact that what I've mentioned means breaking the rules, and a stain will remain on your competition if the match is played. Finishing with Buenas tardes, good afternoon.
Now listen, I think it's a good thing because, as we'll hear in a second from the Como fans who are still possibly going to have to go to Perth or miss out on seeing their team play. It is the first time, and we've been talking about it for about a year now, you and I, Andy, particularly with relation to the programme of matches that players are expected to play, that until the players get out of their box, and hopefully they'll do it responsibly, nothing's going to change. So here's an example of it changing, which leads to the following questions. First of all, do the Spanish authorities and to some extent UEFA, who did that ridiculous press release saying we are dead set against these games being played, but here's the permission for them to be played.
Yes.
Do they look fools, these people?
A little, because I think the point is, and this is what's making people in Italy or organisers in Italy of the game in Perth, Western Australia between Milan and Como, proposed in February, a little uneasy. The fact that it feels as if the cart has been put ahead of the horse by La Liga, because, of course, Javier Tebas is always bold about expansion. And the La Liga statement said, when they said this game isn't going to go ahead, that we remain committed to taking La Liga to every corner of the world. But the fact is, it was seen as a fait accompli when it was passed by UEFA, but it still had to go through FIFA. It still had to go through the US Football Federation. It still had to go through CONCACAF. And there were just too many hoops in the end. So that, combined with the player backlash, clearly made it a thing. And, it was announced as something that was done before all those regulations and all those necessary bodies.
They hadn't dotted the I's, had they?
Exactly. And that's really important. So Relevant Sports, the organiser, who we know have a relationship with UEFA now, they said there just wasn't time to organise it. And I think from their perspective, they couldn't go and sell 60,000 tickets and then go and refund people 3 weeks later. That was clear that couldn't be the case. And they were running out of time.
I'm sorry to jump in, Andy, but we're running out of time. But this section, which takes us to the proposed game between Como and Milan. Don't forget, in the most isolated major city on the planet, Perth. Yes. Nothing wrong with Perth. It's beautiful, I'm told. I've never been there. But it is factually the most isolated place on Earth, which has got a large population. I thought the Como fans put out a very strong statement on social media this week, just pointing out to their own board as much as anything, the loyalty they've showed when Como were in the third and fourth tiers of Italian football. Some people have watched every game since they were in the very bottom of Italian semi-professional football, and now they're expected to break that run, etc., etc. So I'm asking you, since I presume that's not signed or sealed either, could the Italian game now also be called off? Could their players become a bit bolder?
Yeah, I think it is about the players, and it feels it shouldn't be down to the players to change it, but it really could be down to the players to change it if their unhappiness with the schedule and not being consulted over the schedule and not being consulted over an extra 6,000 miles of travelling, for example. Those are the sort of things that push players over the edge. But also, if we're talking about all the things that need to be sorted, of course, they now need to ask the organisers of the game, of the Milan-Como game, they need to ask the Asian Football Federation as well, not just the Australian one, because, of course, Australia now belongs to the Asian Football Federation for international purposes. So that needs to be done as well. There's no suggestion that has been done yet. So I guess, at the very least, the organisers of this game must be looking and saying, right, well, we've got a couple of months more. There's a lot of stuff we need to do, or that's what they should be doing. And, of course, they should be engaging the players, because I think a lot just feel it's just that they've been asked to jump through hoops. Some of them have jumped through hoops, and you saw it actually in the middle of Villarreal versus Manchester City. Fernando Roig, who had found out a couple of hours before kickoff in that game against Manchester City that the game in Miami wasn't going ahead, he had asked La Liga not to say anything until after the game. And you saw him reading the statement on his phone, which dropped during Villarreal versus Manchester City, and then making, by the looks of it, quite an angry phone call to say, why has this happened?
Yeah, the whole thing's been a mess so far. I say it's a very important story because the players appear to have been the main mover in getting this thing stopped. Next up, we've got another big story for you from Germany. Harry Kane didn't score. More about that next here on Trans Europe Express. Yeah, we're nearly 2 minutes into 5 added on in Rome, where it's still Lazio 1, Juventus 0. A big important result this for apparently title-chasing Juventus. They're putting the pressure on now, of course they are. But Max Allegri is looking, how can I put it, miserable at the side of the pitch. And with players like Matteo Guendouzi, for all his faults, he's not one to back down from a battle, and he's getting right stuck in as Juventus desperately try to find an equaliser in that game. Andy, let's turn our attention now to the Bundesliga, where last week we were suggesting that Harry Kane is in such great form that he could easily play as a 10. Well, this week, Bayern picked him as a 10 because they're massive. They're always listening. Uli Hoeneß never missed an edition of the Trans-Europe Express. For a start, there's him. He said he really... And anyway, a 13, whatever way they lined up, and they ended up with a 17-year-old centre-forward, they won again. Their 13th straight win for Bayern Munich. Yeah,
they did. Or, Danny, did they start the decline of their season by putting Kane in a position where he didn't actually score? Yeah, I suppose. I mean, look, great for Nico Jackson. They started with Nicholas Jackson up front, yeah, who also didn't score, by the way. And it was a really weird game because, as we said, Borussia Mönchengladbach, and there's an extraordinary winning goal, it seems, right at the end of Lyon versus Strasbourg. Afonso Moreira, who came on as substitute, the young Portuguese winger from the Cristiano Ronaldo, Figo, etc. production line at Sporting, he came on a substitute when Malik Fofana was stretchered off for that challenge that got Doucouré a red card. He's just cut in from the left-hand side like any Sporting winger onto the right foot, smashed it into the top corner. Lyon 2, Strasbourg 1, deep into stoppage time. But we're going to talk about other young players, of course, because we want to talk about Leonard Carl. No 7-minute investigation after the goal like there was at Everton today. We watched that together. We could have both gone out, had a sandwich while they were trying, and it was just nuts, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. And you know what? It's almost as long as the lag between when Jens Kastrup was sent off for Borussia Mönchengladbach, one of the weakest teams, if not the weakest team in the Bundesliga. They're certainly bottom at the moment. To when Bayern opened the scoring, because Joshua Kimmich opened the scoring in the 65th minute, the latest that Bayern have taken the league in any game this season. And Kimmich was talking about it afterwards, and he was saying, well, we felt that Mönchengladbach felt that they had nothing to lose, and they were pressing us quite high, and they wanted to be quite brave. And then they got their guy sent off, and all of a sudden, we've got 11 players sitting in against us, and it was a completely different kettle of fish. Now, of course, Rafa Guerreiro scored after Kimmich had opened the floodgates, and then the man of the week, the boy of the week, the boy man of the week, Leonard Carl. Schoolboy of the week, 17 years old, Danny, scored his first Champions League goal on his first Champions League start against Club Brugge this week. The youngest Champions League goal scorer in Bayern's history. Brilliant goal that was. Even better goal yesterday on his left foot. And, Kimmich was trying to bring down the expectations afterwards, saying... I know that you can't be expected to know everything, but what do we know about Leonard Carl? Because he's come out of nowhere, really. Well, not as much as we should, because we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? Because, Bayern's academy is sometimes underrated. It produces top-level players at the same rate as a Sporting or a Lyon or a Benfica or an Ajax or any of those in modern times, when you think of the players that have come through that system. I think sometimes we forget that Müller, Schweinsteiger, academy products, all of these players, academy products. And Carl was absolutely way off the first team. But then you had wide players leaving. So you had Kingsley Coman leaving. You had them not having that much money to spend in the transfer market. You had the fact that Paul Vanna, who was fated to be a star of the future, decided he wanted to go to PSV and play more. And so Carl kind of leapt ahead in the queue, and then he played really well in the pre-season games. And, Harry Kane's talked about it, how the squad's quite thin. And he's sort of made the most of that. He's grabbed his opportunity with both hands, and he's looked totally ready for it. The confidence, and as Kimmich was saying, the courage that he's got to grab these big moments bodes really well.
Yeah, and as you say, 17 years of age, and adding to Bayern Munich's, wait for everyone, 47 goals so far this season. It's not even bonfire night. It's not even Halloween, and they've got 47 goals in all competition. No wonder they've extended Vincent Kompany's contract to 2029. Equally, as we talked about protests working, Jerome Boateng has talked about him coming back as a coach. The fans went a little bit potty about that because of stuff that's gone on in his personal life involving accusations of domestic violence. And Bayern have said, right, he's not coming then. So that was another example of carefully targeted resistance to things you don't want to happen, bearing fruit. Andy, Leipzig are still second, and they enjoyed I nearly said they went nap. I don't know what the story is for the phrases for going. They got 6 against Augsburg.
They played brilliantly well. They won 6-0 away at Augsburg, as you say, and it's the biggest defeat of Augsburg's time in the Bundesliga, which is extraordinary to think of, seeing as they play Bayern twice a season for all the time that they've been up. But this Leipzig team has had a major makeover. It's got loads of attacking talent, and they were quite helped actually by Augsburg. Now, look, it's never been said in the past that their coach, Sandro Wagner, who used to be the backup to Lewandowski at Bayern and is the most typically Bavarian man you could ever meet. I think it's fair to say he's quite bold and forthright and quite confident in himself. Sandro Wagner, of course, was in charge of the Germany under-21s before, and he was asked about afterwards, did you not think of like modifying the high line when you were 3-0 down in 20 minutes? He was like, no, it wasn't the problem of the high line, even though they kept conceding the same goal again and again and again. And he was there on the touchline just going, it's fine, come on lads, back to 0-0. And you thought, I don't know how long this is going to last, to be honest.
No. Dortmund eventually beat Cologne with a stoppage time goal, but I suppose in a weekend of players stropping positively and negatively, Adeyemi, come on, guy, the carry on where he got substituted, it's not befitting a team member, is it?
It's really not. And as Niko Kovac said afterwards, basically what you're doing when you're doing that is you're saying your mate shouldn't come on. You're saying your friend shouldn't come on. Is that what he's saying? I think he's a man and he should grow up.
Oh, I mean,
which is classic Kovac.
And Andy, without coming the old man on it myself, he's not wrong, is he?
No, he's not.
Look, professional footballers, they have the first to say it's a squad game. And then when they're removed, either because they're tired or for tactical reasons, they get, around here, what would be called, they get a puss on them. Xavi Simons, he'd play, I thought he worked his socks off, didn't play very well, worked his socks off for Spurs at the new Everton Stadium today, but he had another smacked bottom face on him as he got taken off for somebody with fresh legs. Who's your star of the week in Germany, Andy?
I had a bit of time thinking about this, but in the end, I've gone for Ernest Poku of Bayer Leverkusen. Of course, they got an absolute thwacking in the week, as we'll talk about later. They did beat Freiburg 2-0 today. Poku just come over from Dutch football. Looked brilliant, actually, in the Europa League games for AZ against Spurs last season. 3 starts, 3 goals, including a fantastic opener today.
Yeah, my star of the week glories in a forename that I've never seen before, Fiznik. Oh, yeah, Fiznik. Fiznik Azlani, rather. He plays for Hoffenheim. So Hoffenheim, the worst home team in the Bundesliga, were playing Heidenheim, the worst away team in the Bundesliga. Something had to give. And it was, in fact, Azlani got one of the goals that helped Hoffenheim beat Heidenheim by 3-1. That's his 5th goal this season, by the way. After the match, Frank Schmidt, the Heidenheim manager, who's been there for almost 20 years, God bless his cotton socks, said, if we carry on playing like that, we're going down. You do not need to hear that from your granddad. Let's get ourselves back to the Mexican Grand Prix. Is it over, John Jackson?
It is over, and Lando Norris has won his 7th race of the season. That's McLaren's first win in Mexico since 1989, and most importantly, it now means with 4 races left to go in the 2025 championship, Lando Norris now leads the championship by 1 point. It's going to be a blockbuster end to the season. We were kind of robbed of a fascinating end there. There were 2 chases going on. Charles Leclerc came second in the end, but Max Verstappen was chasing chasing him down in third place. It felt like it only needed one more straight with DRS for Max to get past, but a virtual safety car came out after Carlos Sainz went off, and unfortunately the last lap was kind of a damp squib. Ollie Behrman came fourth. That's his best ever result in Formula One. It's the equal best result for his team Haas, and Oscar Piastri managed to get back to fifth place. He started seventh on the grid, and that is where George Russell finished, with Lewis Hamilton just behind in eighth. A 10-second penalty earlier in the race, but his chances of a podium down the order. So it's Lando Norris with a 1-point lead in the championship with 4 races left to go, and it's Brazil next in a couple of weekends' time.
Thanks, John. We'll continue to keep you right up to date with everything that happens in that race for the Formula One title. The next race, as John said, there in Brazil. And thanks to John Jackson for his work here on talkSPORT this evening, where next here on Trans-Europe Express, we'll be casting an eye over everything that's been going on in France. Yeah, we're going to look at France next, and given that Andy, and we know which way he leans in France, was so excited with that second goal, why don't we start, Andy, with a game between Lyon and Strasbourg, which just ended, with a Lyon victory, I'll take it.
Yeah, that's right. Lyon 2, Strasbourg 1. Really interesting game. And they're always interesting games between Lyon and Strasbourg. A 4-3 and a 4-2 in either direction last season. Liam Rosenior, of course, getting a lot of plaudits from the way he's leading Strasbourg this season, and rightly so. You could even argue that they went to Lyon as slight favourites, given the fact that Lyon, as we know, are in a delicate financial situation at the moment, and Strasbourg have more money to spend than most in the top division, thanks to Bluecoat. They took the lead in the first half, a little bit against the run of play, but a brilliant diving header by Joaquin Panakei, who I think we've worked out that Panakei is going to be Chelsea's centre forward in 2027. Of course, he's replacing Emmanuel Omega, who's going to Chelsea next summer. But Panakei is going to be impossible to keep if he keeps playing like this. Brilliant goal from him again after scoring a scissors kick in the Conference League in the week. And then this weird hat-trick that we talked about. From Ismail Doucouré, who scored an own goal, sliced across. Unfortunately, it wasn't really his fault, from Malik Fofana cross into his own net. Then gave away a penalty, which never should have been a penalty in a million years. The referee gave it. It was clear on the replay that Doucouré had touched the ball. He was told to go over and have a look at it by VAR, so he did, and he stuck with his decision. It was missed anyway. It was saved by Mike Penders, who again could be Chelsea's future goalkeeper. Very good game from him. He was man of the match, Mike Penders. Doucouré gets sent off for a tackle in the second half, which means that Fofana's game is over. On VAR consideration, he's sent off, and the little motorised truck comes and takes Fofana off the field, and hopefully he'll recover quickly. Replaced by former Sporting winger Afonso Moreira, scored his first goal for the club against Brassell in the Europa League win this week, and scored an absolutely top draw winner in stoppage time, stepping inside from the left to smash it into the top corner, which means Lyon are back in the top four after 2 successive league defeats. They've put that right. And I've just got to read you through, as I occasionally do, the table as it stands after 9 games. It's very tight. You've got 4 points between the top 7 teams at the moment. So PSG are top with 20, Lens 19, Marseille 18, Lyon 18, Lille 17, Monaco 17, Strasbourg, who are much better than 7th, by the way, 16.
Okay, well, a good victory for Lyon, I should say, putting a stop to a couple of unwanted defeats. But I wonder if there are people of a Lyon leaning, like yourself, Andy, who perhaps are sucking a thoughtful tooth at how well Lens are doing. Because, of course, they're managed by Pierre Sage, who was the coach of Lyon, who, to my untrained eye, did nothing wrong, but somehow got himself on the wrong side of John Textor and was shown the door.
He did. I think he had 2 bad games in a row, and then he was shown the door, mainly because Paulo Fonseca was out of the job for a while. Textor tried to get him for Botafogo. He didn't want to go to Botafogo, so he waited for a point where he decided he could sack Pierre Sage, and Fonseca came in. Now, look, Fonseca latterly has done pretty well at Lyon. We'll see what happens at the end of the season. But Sage is an exceptional coach, and Lyon was his first senior job. The fact is, he came in, having been taking care of the academy as Lyon's, what would it be, including caretaker's 4th coach of the season at that time, steered them away from certain relegation to European qualification, and his reward was to get the sack 6 months later. Now, he's dignified, particularly in the aftermath of Textor being asked about that and saying, well, actually, credit goes to me for giving him the job in the first place, so I accept his gratitude. Anyway, not one of the most offensive things that John Textor said, but still pretty offensive. But look, it's great that he's got a job at Lens, which is a passionately followed team, and a team that he's doing brilliantly with, because after this comeback win against Marseille yesterday, which is actually one of the games of French football between 2 such passionately supported teams, they're a goal down to a brilliant Mason Greenwood finish in the first half, and then came back because Benjamin Pavard had a bit of a nightmare. He gave away a penalty and then scored an own goal. Now, Florian Thauvin was a key figure in this, former key player of Marseille, of course, and still Marseille's top scorer of the 21st century with 71 goals in the time that he was there. and such a confusing figure who's done very well since he's been back at Lens. He got himself, of course, a recall to the French national team. He spoke about it afterwards, and it was really strange, the penalty that Pavard conceded, because originally Odsonne Edouard, formerly of Celtic and Crystal Palace, was cautioned for a dive. VAR called in the ref to have a look at it. He did change his mind, retract the yellow card and give Lens a penalty. And Thauvin, showing great leadership, took the ball, gave it to Edouard, and Edouard scored a Panenka penalty. Such guts in the situation. And then they asked Thauvin about it afterwards, and he said, yeah, I felt like Odsonne really needed it at that moment. And then almost in a lowered tone, he said afterwards, I don't really fancy taking a penalty against Marseille.
Yeah, also, we should say Paris Saint-Germain won 3-0 at Brest. Brest didn't play badly, but they often do that against PSG and get clobbered. Achraf Hakimi, perhaps cementing your idea that he's the best right back in the world, was absolutely outstanding. So let's pick some stars of the week then here in France. I'll go first. My star of the week is Matthias Ablin of Nantes. Now, he was linked with some big moves away during the summer, and it's fair to say got the right hump when those didn't materialise. But he got a brilliant goal in a 2-1 win for Nantes away at Paris FC. Not to be confused with their more illustrious neighbours, of course. I could have shared the star of the week, actually, with the other goal scorer for Nantes, who was Youssef El Arabi, who got to score the opener. Pretty unremarkable, until you bear in mind that he's 38 years of age. So well done to him as well. We talk about another 38-year-old goal scorer when we turn our attention to Italy a little later. Who's your star of the week in France, though, Andy?
Tell you what Monaco could do with Youssef El Arabi. My star of the week is Mohamed Salisu, former Southampton defender, of course. Brilliant early header by him to win the game for Monaco against Toulouse, which put them in the top four until Lille won 6-1 against Metz earlier, and Lyon won just now. So they're down in six, as we've established. It's very, very tight. But of course, as we know from against Spurs in the week, Monaco strikers can't score for toffee at the moment, so they needed Salisu to pop up.
Yeah, they can't score against that goalkeeper, it's fair to say. But if you talk to the forwards of Everton, they'll say, oh, yeah, that goalkeeper. Much maligned at Vicario. We'll talk about him later when we review everything that happened in the European competitions this week. That's the first hour of your special edition of Trans-Europe Express. Kelly and Brassell live from the Kilkenny Hills. Much more to come as we motor through all the big stories from across the continent. Stay with us here on talkSPORT.
Let's be honest, we've all found ourselves raging at a referee's decision at some stage. This feel familiar?
That is an absolutely shocking decision.
They've got a case in that it was a bad decision.
It's such a poor decision.
Yeah, I think he's just made a bad decision in that instance.
But what does it take to get to the very top of football refereeing? Every referee starts with their county FA. It's a simple training course and you can take it as soon as you hit your 14th birthday. Once you've done that, you have to go through at least 11 hours of face-to-face training. You'll then graduate as a level 7 official, which means you can take charge of county level games. But hold your horses, there's still a long way to go to get to the Premier League. Your next step is to spend a year each at levels 6, 5 and 4. This covers the top of the amateur game. Only at level 3 do you start doing Northern Counties or Isthmian League level games, for example. If you've done this all quickly, you can reach level 2 and ref your first National League match after, oh, I don't know, 6 years? After getting enough experience at that level, you can apply to be a referee in the EFL. There's an interview, people watching you do games, and then, if the EFL are happy, you'll be granted a level 1 licence to ref in games in League 2 and above. Now, they don't just say on you go to the Premier League, you have to work your way up through the divisions. Only after years of hard work and refereeing on cold Tuesday nights in Stoke can you be considered to do matches in some of Europe's very best stadiums. Now, who was the youngest to reach the very top? It was actually Michael Oliver. He refed his first Premier League match in 2010 at the tender age of just 25. So if you want to follow in his footsteps, crack on. It'll only take you roughly a decade, thousands of hours of work and an incredibly thick skin. In total, there are 37,000 registered referees across England, but the PGMOL has only deemed 21 good enough for the top flight. That means there's not even a 1 in 1,000 chance you'll even make it in. Obviously, referees can make mistakes, but when you think about it, having a go at them is kind of like slating a brain surgeon.
Yeah, welcome back one and all to the second hour of 3 of tonight's edition of Trans Europe Express with me, Danny Kelly, and Andy Brassell. For those of you who missed the start of the show, it's a historic edition of Trans Europe Express because Andy is upstairs in my house. Yes, he's in the Kilkenny Hills and we're doing it in 2 separate rooms. I'm going to tease you now. For those of you, the millions of you who now watch talkSPORT on your smart TVs and YouTube and all the rest of it, the live coverage, at the end of the show, we will attempt a radio and television first. Andy will stop speaking, then he will run downstairs, come into a place where I'm broadcasting, and you will see the two of us together. It's never been done before. Yeah, welcome back. We're going to cover Spain, Italy and the Champions League in this hour. You're listening to me, Danny Kelly. He's Andy Brassell. You're the listening millions. It's all good, my friends. It's all so very good. So, Andy, Italy next. And I think for people of a certain generation, this will send a frisson of joy through their bodies. As I say the words, the headline for what's happening in Italy in the last couple of days is Conte goes full Keegan. If you don't know, look it up. Because, Andy, first of all, an incredibly important and very credible victory for Napoli against Inter, which you'll tell us about now, after which Conte went off on I mean, people say, oh, he came off his long run. He wasn't coming from the edge of the boundary. He was outside the ground, had to get a bus to the end of his run, and then ran the full distance like a half marathon to get to the point he wanted to make. First of all, though, given that they got absolutely mullered in Eindhoven during the week, a great win for Napoli.
Yeah, it was a huge response from Napoli, Danny. And I think you have to bear in mind that the sort of stick that Conte got off the back of that. Now, of course, I think it's quite easy to throw his Champions League record back in his face. In fact, on the Continent podcast that I was on with David Cartledge earlier in the week, he described Conte as a one-game-a-week manager, which I think for anyone who's supported any of the clubs that he's coached, I think you can understand where David is coming from, because a return of the clubs that he's coached in the Champions League have not been minnows. You know, we're talking about Juventus, we're talking about Chelsea, we're talking about Inter, we're talking about Spurs, even if they've not been Champions League regulars, they're a huge club. And now Napoli, clubs of name, clubs of renown, one quarter final in 15 years. And that's not much, is it? And no. I think for a lot of people, that defeat in Eindhoven, and especially the manner of it, the way they fell to bits. Remember, they actually took the lead in that game through Scott McTominay, conceded 3 in the last 10 minutes when they were down to 10 men, and it all really fell to bits. It felt as if that was a summation of everything that's gone wrong for Antonio Conte in the Champions League. So for them to give a response, especially against his former club, it feels absolutely massive. You know, there's no doubt about that. So I think the tail of the tape in the game, they take the lead through Kevin De Bruyne. He scores from the penalty spot, and immediately you see him feel the back of his thigh. It's clear his game is done. The fact that he leaves the pitch in tears, comforted by his teammates, and then comes to the bench on crutches in the second half makes you think, okay, there was that thigh injury at Manchester City that kept him out for 4 months. So a bit of a concern there. Look, Inter were really good in the first half, particularly. They created a load of chances. Napoli go 2-0 up through Scott McTominay. They get a penalty and pull one back. Of course, Hakan Çalhanoğlu always scores penalties for Inter, apart from that one where he hit the post against Napoli last season. And then Frank Zambo-Anguissa, who's brilliant for them, brings it to 3-1 and seals the win later on. Now, I think the interesting thing is, well, there are a couple of interesting things. Firstly, we love to hear about Scott McTominay goal, don't we? 2 in the week, didn't really count for anything in the end. But he was talking about it afterwards, and it's a long pass from Leonardo Spinazzola, and it goes over the top, and McTominay kind of runs past it and then comes back and gets it onto his right foot from the edge of the box, smashes in an absolutely brilliant shot. It's a great goal, and Zambo-Anguissa's goal is brilliant as well. But McTominay was talking about it, and it's such an unusual pass receipt, because you expect him to take it in his stride and then go on and score. Sure. He said, honestly, it was so high, I lost it in the floodlights. I couldn't see it. So he needed a minute to recuperate the pass and then score it. But I think the fact that those two guys who were so big for them last season score the goals, with no De Bruyne in the team, it looks a load easier. They go back to 4-3-3, and it looks a lot more straightforward. But Conte, as you were saying, Danny, not interested in talking about any of that afterwards. He has a pop at Inter. He has a pop at Beppe Marotta, who runs Inter. He has a pop at Lautaro Martinez, says, oh, well, I didn't get to know him much in the time that I was there, but I'm sure he's a great guy.
Didn't they win the title together?
Pretty sure that happened. I'm glad you said that, just to make sure I didn't imagine it. And it was a bit Father Ted and Now for the Liars, but you know.
But Andy, I mean, and just because it was the full Conte performance, and yet one of the young players, what's his name, Noah Lang, asked about his relationship with Conte. He gave an answer that, you know where my loyalties and knowledge lies, reminded me that Jez Spence was completely frozen out by Antonio Conte, despite the fact it turns out he's a brilliant footballer. What did Noah Lang have to say about his manager?
Well, immediately you've made me think that Noah Lang is going to be great at left back for Spurs in a couple of years' time. But I think the thing with Noah Lang is he's someone who's not short on confidence in his own ability. Of course, he went back to PSV, ended up getting a right whooping. And he didn't start again. And he didn't start against Inter at the weekend. And he said that, it's frustrating not playing more. Antonio Conte's only spoken to me once since I've arrived. Not wise, really. I mean, maybe Noah Lang being Noah Lang, he can make a rap tune about it. I don't know. But I think it might be wiser for him to look at himself and wonder why at 26 he's finally getting a break at a big club and he can't get in the team. That's what I would be looking at if I was him.
But if he can't find out from the coach how he can improve, I mean, he is a funny one, Antonio, isn't he? He is a funny one. Milan did well on Friday night to not lose. They had to get a late equaliser against Pisa, but they have lost because they lost the top spot.
Yeah, they have, and they had the chance to win the game. They led through Rafael Leao, who was great again. He's on a real streak of form, and hopefully that streak of form turns into a season of form because he's wonderful to watch when he's on it. They went 2-1 down. A bit like, I suppose the thing is with Pisa, you'll get plenty of the Turkish Super League effect, but within Serie A, really. So if you're thinking of making the move, come with me to the Turkish Super League, but you're not quite there yet, try watching Pisa in the coming weeks because you've got Alberto Gilardino as coach. You had Juan Cuadrado, he's still going, scoring the equaliser. You had Mbala and Zola scoring the goal to put them in front. But anyway, they didn't quite get it over the line because we've been saying all day while we've been watching football together, Danny, that so much can happen in stoppage time. I don't care if you're winning at 90 minutes. It's not over until it's over. And so you had an equaliser from Zachary Atakame, the young Swiss player, his first goal for Milan, in the 93rd minute. You had a brilliant chance from Alexis Salamakers to win it just after, and Milan didn't manage that. So they fell off the top. Probably all down to Max Allegri getting manager of the month that he received before. Yeah, it's not just a thing in England that when you get manager of the month, you're going to have a terrible game. And they're still there or thereabouts, though.
Yeah, and Andy spent the afternoon entertaining his family by watching football, the two of us. We were noting that a game now lasts for 100 minutes. Most of them last for 100 minutes if you count the extra time they added on time at both halves. And so you can never tell how long the game's going to go. So when Andy turned to me, I think he was trying to be nice when we were watching Everton against Spurs, with Spurs 2 up away from home, and said, I think Spurs have defended pretty well here. We get on like a house on fire, Andy and I, but I did scowl at him because anybody knows you cannot be telling people that their team is completely safe because they might play for another 20 blinking minutes. I can't wait to tell you about my star of the week, Andy. He got Cremonese's first goal in a 1-1 draw against Atalanta. Atalanta got a late equaliser. They're still unbeaten, though they're 7th in the table because they draw too many games. But that goal was scored. Ladies and gentlemen, come on down, Jamie Vardy, at 38 of your English years of age. And not only did the old boy score, but he celebrated with a combined somersault and backflip. If I didn't know better, I would search back into my gymnastics vocabulary. It looked like a Sukahara to me. Absolutely fantastic. Who's your star of the week there in Italy, Andy?
My star of the week is the maybe not quite so entertaining Guillermo Maripan, centre-back for Torino, who they've had a brilliant revival over the last couple of weeks. They were looking like one of the poorest teams in the division. Beat Napoli last week, came from a goal down and an early goal down against Patrick Vieira's Genoa to win 2-1. Maripan, despite being a centre-back, scoring an incredible volley in stoppage time, obviously in stoppage time. All great goals are in stoppage time now to give them the win. Second in a row.
Stoppage time, anything between 90 and 120 minutes. Absolutely right, Andy. Next, we'll talk about Spain, and I'll tell you about another very old geezer, pretty much known to Premier League fans as well, still banging them in. Spain next here on Trans-Europe Express, everyone. Yeah, and no doubt much happier Ali McCoist returns alongside Jeff Stelling tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. So be sure to tune in for their take on the weekend's football, including Danny Roll's first league victory as manager of Rangers. That's talkSPORT Breakfast with Jeff Stelling and Ali McCoist on your radio and smart TV from 6 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. Yeah, Andy, let's talk next about Spain. Then we've already done the Clásico. Still some very interesting results. We'll talk about what's happening in Bilbao very, very soon. But I suppose another result that, if not causing your eyebrows to bounce, certainly an eye-opener, in what is a kind of derby. The teams are an hour apart, I think. Valencia against Villarreal. Valencia would be the bigger club, but they got beat 2-0 at home. And the truth is, Valencia are no good. And Villarreal are doing okay.
Yeah, Villarreal have got themselves in a great position since the start of the season. Third place as stands, and already 13 points in front of Valencia. That's where we are at the moment. And Valencia are in a terrible state, and it's particularly apparent at home. And you know, anyone who knows about Valencia at home knows that there is expectation, there is the feeling of being a big club, but at the moment there's this massive disconnect between the fans and the players. Now that's not totally the players' fault. It's not an incredible set of players, and they're not being brilliantly coached by Carlos Corberán at the moment. I feel, even though he did a really good job last season to get them away from the bottom, and the first half of 2025 was really good because it had to be, otherwise they would have been going down. This time they're back in the relegation zone, having lost to Villarreal, and they look in massive trouble. There's no doubt about it. And Super Deporte, which is the Valencia-based sports newspaper that follows the club's every move, has really gone in on them today. When I say really gone in on them, it's really gone in on Peter Lim, of course, well known over here for his business with Meriton in terms of providing money for other players and being a player investment fund. His involvement with Salford City, of course, before that changed hands. And he's really just an absentee landlord. It looks like he doesn't care about the club. And even though there was that improvement in the first half of the year, even though the new Mestalla is back on track. Of course, they're still in the old one at the moment. The new Mestalla started being built nearly 20 years ago, and it hasn't happened. But they're hoping to get in there in a couple of years for that 100th anniversary of the club. The question is, what division are they going to be in? Because
Andy,
there's just no direction.
Those of us who are old enough to remember the turn of the century and Valencia's brilliant teams around that time. This is, obviously football changes. Teams come and go. Teams rise and fall. That's the nature of pyramids, and they're great. But anyone who can remember back 20 years to the teams Valencia used to put out in the Champions League, I mean, this is just heartbreaking to watch the team falling apart through what is essentially neglect. Let's be honest, it's neglect, isn't it?
That is neglect. That's exactly what it is, Danny. And I think you look at those two Champions League finals of 2000 and 2001, the La Liga titles of 2002 and 2004 under Rafa Benitez, the UEFA Cup as well in 2004.
A great team.
Even the teams with David Villa, David Silva, who qualified for the Champions League under Unai Emery, the team that won the Copa del Rey under Marcelino, and they treated him like he was nothing. I mean, it's really, really terrible to see. The only clubs below them at the moment are Girona and Oviedo, who we might come to a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, different kinds of problems, but problems nonetheless. For another of my favourite clubs in Spain, Athletic Bilbao. They lost at home, having won in Europe this week, but they're not doing well in the league. They lost at home to, how can I describe them? Gritty, gutsy, grafting Getafe. Is that about right?
Yeah, there are probably a few other words that you could use.
You want to call them gits, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely part of it. And I think after a taxing week in the Champions League, Getafe anywhere, home or away, is the last team that you want to play. And they kept it tight. The ball wasn't in play much. They wasted loads of time. They sucked the atmosphere out of the stadium. And they got a winner with 15 minutes left, Borja Mayoral, who's got one of those really interesting itinerant careers. If you look at all the clubs that he's played for, it's amazing. Still a good finisher, still in his 20s and still a good finisher. But it's funny because it felt like a corner was turned this week because Athletic, even if it was just against Karabakh, they went a goal down in the first minute and they won the game comfortably in the end. Gorka Kudufeta's back in the team and scoring goals in the week. And Nico Williams is back. And you think, okay, everything's good. And then Getafe turn up and go, actually, life's not good. It's dystopian. You know, it's just the last thing you need, and they're stuck in this tricky position because already, you know, no one's expecting them to keep pace with Real Madrid and Barcelona and Atletico, but Villarreal, who are their real competition, are quite a bit ahead of them already, and that is an issue.
Yeah, it strikes me, Andy, and you know, I'm not an expert, that Bilbao just haven't got an out-and-out striker that's any good at the moment. Meanwhile, a club in a sort of opposite trajectory, one of the absolute, maybe the favourite to go down, Barcelona's other club, Espanyol. I'm sorry I said that, Espanyol. That's not fair on a great historic club. Favourites to go down at the start of the season, up to fourth. Yes. Sunderland style.
It is Sunderland style. You know, it's an absolutely incredible effort by them. And as you say, no one fancied them at the start of the season, least of all me, I think it's fair to say, to stay out of the bottom three. But I guess really, when you talk about teams being built in the image of their coach, you think about a Mourinho team, for example. But actually, I think
I'd rather not, but go on.
Yeah, okay. We'll move on swiftly from that. But Manolo Gonzalez is that, but in a totally different way. So this was someone who had a journeyman playing career, a journeyman coaching career, until you go back a couple of years, and well, probably not even that. What, a year and a half? They're coming up 2 years. When he took over Espanyol, when they were struggling to get out of the second tier, he got them promoted. Really, I think they only employed him because he was cheap, because he was the B team coach as well. And we've seen this as well with Giraldez at Celta, who's completely changed their team and their style of playing since Rafa Benitez got sacked, and he's taken Celta into Europe, which has been brilliant. But Manolo Gonzalez has done a great job. And at 46, 47 years old, he's a coach who deserves an enormous amount of respect. Now, they beat Elche this weekend, which is not easy because Elche have been really good and really tough to beat since they came up on the crest of a wave this season. Carlos Romero got the winner. It's also worth pointing out, by the way, two other things about Espanyol. Firstly, that they lost their goalkeeper, Joan Garcia, who had a massive impact for them last season. Of course, he went off to Barcelona, and a player who I know you fancied for the Premier League because he's that kind of cupboard size of goalkeeper. He's got such incredible presence, and ended up at Barcelona anyway, which, you know, would be really annoying to Espanyol fans because, you know, they're already been treated as if, not like they're rivals, but as if they're nothing by a lot of Barcelona fans.
Sure.
So that's got to hurt. So for them to be in the top four the same weekend that Barcelona lose the Clásico, is great for them. The other thing we've got to point out about Espanyol and their overachieving, nearly got a second goal to clinch it right at the end from Tyrese Dolan, of course, who was at Blackburn for a number of years, who was really good there and has started the season, even though he's not scored yet, fantastically well, actually, for them. So another Englishman for us to watch out for in La Liga.
Who's your star of the week in Spain, Andy?
My star of the week is it was a really tough choice. I think in the end I am going to have to go for Carlos Romero because to get Espanyol to fourth is not nothing. So, yeah, let's stick with him.
Yeah. You realise that occasionally when you're away doing a better paying gig, and if Lars Siversen comes on, he allows himself 2 stars of the week in each of these leagues. Scandalous, really. Mine, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing now. Mine is Azzedine Ounahi, who was brilliant from Morocco, if you remember, in the 2020 World Cup. Got a big move to Marseille, where They didn't fancy him at all, and he was moved on then to apparently hopeless Girona, who were 2-0 down this weekend to Oviedo. Now, they came back to draw 3-3, and Unai got to the goal that made it 2-2. He was joined on the goal-scoring charts. Yes, 38-year-old.
39.
Yeah, no, Jamie Vardy. He says, no, that's nothing. He's 39, Christian Stuani. It's hard to believe. It's almost 10 years since he was at Middlesbrough. Since then, he's been at Girona. And Andy, in the league alone, he has played 264 times for Girona and scored 132 goals, exactly, and down to decimal points, exactly a goal every 2 games. He and Azzedine Unai are my stars of the week in Spain. Absolutely lovely. Next here on Trans-Europe Express, we'll be looking at the Champions League for the next half an hour. We'll start with the 6 English teams in the tournament. Yeah, it's our biggest competition yet. We're giving you the chance to play to win up to £100,000. It's talkSPORT's biggest cash prize ever, £100,000, completely tax-free. So if you're the lucky winner, the excitement doesn't stop there. You'll also be coming to talkSPORT Towers on Thursday, the 13th of November, to play for that life-changing cash prize. Here's how to enter.
18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word cash to 83338 and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or you can enter for free by calling 0330 880 3338. All entries must be received by the 6th of November at 4 p.m. This is a talkSPORT limited promotion run on talkSPORT, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Yes, let's talk about the Champions League now. First of all, what an amazing Tuesday and Wednesday it was. 71 goals across the two nights in a remarkable, and you might say a vindication of sort of vindicating the new format. I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but the games were amazing and open and lots of goals. And we're going to spend the next 25 minutes talking about them. We'll start with talking about the 6 English teams. All of whom won except for one, who were very, very brave in Monaco, and deserved to get their backside handed to them, but got away with it. Andy, I've been writing and thinking a lot about this in recent weeks, the sheer physical power of the Premier League. They've got great players. They've got highly paid players. They've got expensively acquired players. They've got bigger and more powerful athletes than ever before in the Premier League. And I think in at least 3 or 4 of these games, that was among the deciding factors. Certainly Arsenal against Atletico Madrid. You saw the game between Newcastle and Benfica. Chelsea and Ajax, I thought, was the same. Pick any of those, but one of the main factors was the Premier League now buys, trains and presents the biggest, hardest, most physical players in the world.
Yeah, Danny, let's start with Arsenal and Atletico. I agree with all of that. And let's start at Arsenal, though, because not only are they the form team of the moment, it was the most eye-catching result of the week. And I think a lot of people will have seen that and thought, well, here's Arsenal absolutely flattening another Champions League contender. Now, look, I would take slight issue with the description of Atletico as a Champions League contender.
They're not there.
I don't think they can win this.
But nor are they supposed to be pushovers in the Champions League either.
No, they're not. And I think the way that this game went, what was more impressive by Arsenal, I think, is not the result itself, or not just the result itself, but the manner in which they achieved it. Because for the first hour, Atletico were well in it. And I think Atletico match up to them really well. And in the last half hour, Arsenal don't just beat them, they make them look like weaklings. And Atletico, even though they've evolved a lot in the last 13 years under Diego Simeone, and there are nearly 14 years, and they're a very different side to A, the one he took over, B, the one he took to the Champions League final in 2014 and 2016. I think the fact that they've got depth off the bench and all that sort of stuff is something that should have given them a chance in this game. And everything in the first hour suggested that they were well in it. But once Arsenal got the bit between their teeth, they did that thing that good teams do in the Champions League, which is take an advantage and turn it into like unstoppable momentum. That was really, really impressive for me. And that Gyökeres was there scoring goals 3 and 4. People may say, okay, well, they're superfluous. They're not. I think that's something that A, absolutely kills the game, and B, proves what you were saying about that physical power and the advantage that it gives them. I mean, obviously, there are lots of other excellent parts to Arsenal's game.
Sure.
But you don't expect to outmuscle Atletico, or at least people on the outside don't expect that. But it was funny, when after Gabriel opened the scoring, they make a change to try and freshen it up. And the 3 players they bring on, Baena, Conor Gallagher, and I can't remember who the other one was. I think it might have been the left-back, Ruggieri. And then you think, okay, this is going to freshen them up. This is going to toughen them up. And these guys just can't get to the pace of the game at all. You know, they're like pensioners trying to cross the road in a hurricane.
I do think that the Atletico Madrid manager, Mr. Simeone, may well, having spent the last 5 years trying to make the team less physical, less brutish, he might say, look what's going on in the Premier League, and use it as an excuse to go back to the old ways. You saw Newcastle do something similar to, a not terrible Benfica team.
No, and Benfica had their moments in the first half in particular, and really it was about the battle between Dodi Lukebakio and Dan Burn. Burn was really, really struggling against Lukebakio in that first half, and I think he often does at left back. He's a very good centre half. I don't really fancy him much at full back.
Not in one-on-ones, no.
No, exactly. And I think especially someone who's fast and very skillful like Lukebakio. But I think having said that, you knew that if Newcastle could get to an hour with their noses in front, that they would completely capsize Benfica in the end of that. Now, Benfica kind of got let off the hook a little bit in the beginning because, of course, that Newcastle midfield, which is as strong and powerful as it gets, and it's got that great synergy between Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali and Joe Ellington, who
I
do
love that
things.
three. I love that three.
They fit together brilliantly, and actually they needed Bruno to be brilliant because the other two didn't start. So Benfica got a little bit let off the hook by that. You could tell they picked a slightly more physical team to try and deal with that. But of course, the physicality is a problem that Benfica have at the moment. They're struggling to finish games strongly, and that they had that at Chelsea where they kept the game quite tight, and you're expecting them to mount a sort of charge in the last 20 minutes, and they can't because they don't have enough in the tank because, as we've discussed before, they've played so many games. Now, a point that I was making on TNT Sport when I was at the game is the fact that Enzo Baranachea, the midfielder who was loaned, of course, from Aston Villa to Benfica, there's a clause in his contract that the move becomes permanent after 15 games. They've played so many games, it became permanent a week and a half ago.
Wow.
I mean, how is that even possible? Someone who's just arrived in the league, they're playing so many games that his move becomes permanent mid-October.
Wow. So 4 goals for Arsenal, 3 for Newcastle, 5 for Chelsea against, let's be honest, hapless Ajax. Another monstrous victory for Premier League side.
Yeah, and of course, John Heitinger was getting a lot of stick from the fans at Stamford Bridge, some of it quite harsh and personal. And people quoted him off for not going and saluting the fans afterwards. I wouldn't fancy going anywhere near them after that, to be honest. You think it might be red rag to a bull. He's still in his job, partly because if Ajax sack Heitinger, they're going to have to sack Alex Kroos, the sporting director, as well, and then the season's pretty much a write-off. I mean, it was extraordinary to me, Danny. I don't know about to you, because they were absolutely awful, and we realise they're not a great Ajax side anyway. But the fact Heitinger picked exactly the same 11 for the game away at Twente this afternoon. I mean, I don't know what says.
It either shows tremendous chutzpah or that he hasn't got much resources, Andy. One of those things, or probably both, are true.
Yeah, I mean, all they did really is get rained on at Stamford Bridge. Like nothing else happened from the Ajax perspective.
Well, that may be why he picked the same 11, Andy. He didn't do anything in London.
Yes, I suppose that might be it. But I don't know. I look at them, and every time I see Ajax, it's evident what a great job Francesco Farioli did there. And, it's easy, I think, from a distance to criticise them for unattractive football last season. But the fact that Farioli got them to the last day with a chance of winning the title, got them to win in a point of winning the title with that team, what an effort, really.
Yeah, well, last season they were unattractive and decent. Now they're just unattractive.
Yeah.
To be fair, Erling Haaland, speaking of power, absolutely brilliant again against Villarreal. City won 2-0 there. Liverpool took a match off from their terrible form in the Premier League to win by 5-1 in Frankfurt. These are massive wins for the English clubs. The exception to the rule being the mighty Tottenham Hotspur, who, let's be honest, Andy, in Monaco should have won the game by 2 or 3, and it was only Vicario that stood between Spurs and ignominy.
Yeah, I mean, he was brilliant, of course, Vicario, and we saw again today what a talented shot stopper he is.
Yeah, he's never gonna win the Puskás for his Cruyff turn, is he? But he is a brilliant shot stopper, and boy, he needed to be in France.
Yeah, he did, and I kind of wonder with those chances missed by particularly Folarin, Balogun, and to a lesser extent Mika Biarritz, and there was a bit of luck.
Minamino had 3 good chances in the last 10 minutes, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder with what happened for Balogun and Biarritz. As former Arsenal players, maybe they hate Arsenal as much as you guys do by not pulling the trigger on Tottenham. I don't know what happened really, but Monaco's goal scoring problems coming back to bite them. It's interesting. Since they got that thrashing from Club Brugge, they look much better in the Champions League than they have done in Liga.
Yeah, it should be just a little pointer here, though. The changing face of the Champions League of European football. The teams with no points in the Champions League include Ajax and Benfica, both previous winners of the tournament. In the next section, we'll turn our attention to the teams who are still, we'll turn attention to the non-English teams, several of which still have 100% records. Before that, though, a bit of breaking news from the world of cricket. Australia captain Pat Cummins, of course, a brilliant test bowler these days, will not be fit in time for the opening match of the Ashes Test in Perth. Steve Smith will lead the side in his absence. Cummins has resumed running and expects to return to bowling shortly. That's come from Cricket Australia. And in my uneducated opinion, this is England's best hope down there this winter, is that Australia's brilliant battery of bowlers, all of whom are in their mid-30s, may start to break down. But Pat Cummins, who is fantastic, will miss the first test. More Champions League. Just a second here, a Trans-Europe Express live to myself and Andy Brassell from the Kilkenny Hills. Yeah, the Champions League on Tuesday and Wednesday, 71 goals across the two nights. Many of them scored by greedy teams in great clusters, including, Andy, we've talked about some of the teams who have gone through so far unbeaten. Two more of those with really, pretty startling wins, both of them away from home. I mean, obviously, Bayer Leverkusen 2, Paris Saint-Germain 7. I mean, I don't know where to start with this game. Paris weren't even necessarily at their best, but talk about a statement win.
Yeah, it really was. And I think the fact that not just PSG have won 3 out of 3, and one of 5 teams to have done so, Arsenal being another one, of course. I think the remarkable thing is you look at the way they were in the group stage last season. And I don't think you can say that they were the same team at the start of last season's Champions League as they were by the end of it.
They grew into it, yeah.
Yeah, big time. And I think learning to not have to play with a proper centre forward in inverted commas was what really changed them, that front three. Of course, they've been dealing with all sorts of injuries, but they've gone into this Champions League this season to score a ton of goals, to crush the opposition. You look at how they beat Atalanta 4-0 in the first game as well. And this was unbelievably ruthless. Of course, they were able to bring Desiree Doué back. They were able to bring Ousmane Dembélé off the bench, and all those things helped. And Dembélé scored almost straight away, having been out for 6 weeks. But I think you look at the whole attitude of the team, the way that Nuno Mendes pops up in really the centre forward position and scores a goal, and they're not even playing with a back five. It's remarkable, really. But what I thought was the most extraordinary thing about this game, as you said, is the fact that leading in 10 minutes from half time is 1-1 and it's 10 aside. They're 1-0 up and they've got the opposition down to 10 men, PSG, and they managed to get Zabani sent off, concede a second penalty, let Leverkusen back into the game because, of course, they missed the first penalty. So you had 2 red cards and 2 penalties, one of which was missed, one of which was scored by Alex Garcia in that first half. And, if you're Leverkusen and if you're Kasper Hjulmand, after 35 minutes, you're thinking, yeah, we've done all right here. You go in at half time, 4-1 down. And you think, how did that happen? That they are so ruthless when they get a sniff. The finishes were brilliant. Kvaratskhelia was brilliant. Doué was brilliant again. And then they just didn't take their foot off the gas in the second half. And, there are lots of reasons why, I guess, that we can try and identify behind these thrashings. And you had this last season as well. You had that game right at the start between Bayern Munich and Dinamo Zagreb, where Bayern were 3-0 up, then they were 3-2 up, and Dinamo were right back in it, and they end up winning 9-2. I think teams, because there is more length to the games, more length to the group, they are inclined to chuck it in if they're in a losing position, thinking maybe we can pick it up.
And these games are lasting 100+ minutes, Andy. Once a team is pulling away, they've got a long time in which to cement their dominance.
Exactly, and I think there is an advantage, especially to the bigger teams, being able to bring on fresher players off the bench. But having said that, I do think if you're PSG, you're looking at last season, and it's easily forgotten because they ended up being the champions. They nearly went out in the league stage, just as Real Madrid did, just as Manchester City did.
Yeah, I mean, another eye-catching result, I think. Inter, Belgian teams have done pretty well in some of these ties in the past 3 or 4 months, but Union Saint-Gilloise 0, Inter 4.
Well, so Union have lost their coach. We know Sebastian Pocognoli has gone to Monaco. He managed his first Champions League game for them against Spurs, as we were talking about before. But still, they opened this game really brightly. Great for the first 10 minutes, created a few chances. And Jan Sommer was brilliant in goal for those first 10 minutes. And then when Inter got themselves in front, there was absolutely no stopping them. They're ruthless, they're relentless. One of those teams that's won 3 out of 3 so far, not conceded a goal either, which when we go back to the beginning of last season and the first time that they reached the final in recent times when they lost to Manchester City in 2013, they got to that final, a far inferior Inter team to the one at the moment, I would argue. It was all about clean sheets. It was all about clean sheets away from home in particular. So this Inter team, I mean, Antonio Conte said it, and it was maybe lost halfway through his rant last night after the Napoli 3-1 game. But he was saying, this is a team that's above and beyond the rest in Serie A in terms of resources they've got, in terms of the depth they've got, in terms of the players they've got. And you don't reach the Champions League final 2 out of 3 seasons by accident. And he's absolutely right in that respect.
Of course he is. The other eye-catching result, I guess, if we're talking about thrashings, given that they lost the Clásico a few hours ago, Barcelona 6, Olympiacos 1. That result is an argument for the people who say that this league has got too many teams in it, and the gap between the best teams and the worst teams is too big.
It is. It's also an argument for the standards of officiating are not great, I think, because Olympiacos were well in this for a bit as well. They went 2-0 down. They pulled one back. Ayoub El Kaabi scored, as he always does. Of course, he scored the goal that won them the Conference League, making them the first Greek team to win a European trophy. And they were well in it. And then Santiago Heze got sent off for a ridiculous second yellow card. Of course, you can't have VAR recourse because it's a yellow card. And that absolutely stunned everyone. And from that point, really, Barcelona really ran away from it. But if we're talking about top quality forward play, being able to take a game away from a team, I think we have to look at Fermin and his goal in that. Of course, he scored in El Clásico today. He's in brilliant form at the moment. We look at those 2 Marcus Rashford goals as well. Fantastic. And of course, he's right up there in the Champions League top scorers at the moment. So I think when we're talking about, top level ruthlessness, taking sort of spells of dominance and turning them into momentum, game-ending spells of momentum. This is exactly what we're talking about with Barcelona. I know you still don't quite fancy them as one of the favourites for the competition.
Well, no. What I think is we're in danger of. They are favourites for it with the bookmakers, or they were. I think that they're a very good team who've got Lamine Yamal. What they need to be. Is a great team that happens to have the great player in them. I'm not so certain yet. Yeah, Andy, I'll be truthful with you. So let me ask you then, with about a minute to go of this section, leaving Spurs aside, where do you see the likely finalists at the moment? And we're a long way out, and it's a very hard question, but I want to ask you anyway.
I still feel it could be a PSG era of dominance. I feel they're that good, and it's not just about the way they've started. Even without a full squad, it has to be said, because they've had a ton of injuries. And look, after the World Club Cup, like the Club World Cup, God knows what physical condition they'll be in by next March, April, May. I don't think we can really know the answer to that.
Or for any teams involved in this nutty schedule, of course.
No, and I think of all the clubs out there, of all the elite clubs out there, with what they've been through physically, bear in mind they played every match possible last season. I think it would be smart of PSG between league stage and knockout stage, go and buy 3-4 more players. I think that would be the smart thing to do.
Yeah, and who might play them in the final in this imaginary game we're playing?
Look, I would like it to be Barcelona, because I know a lot of people wanted PSG versus Barcelona last season. I'm not sure their defensive model is sustainable, was what I would say to Hansi Flick if he was coming into my bank for a loan and I was the manager.
Yeah, and that's essentially my doubt about them as well. And I can, I don't want to start saying things and making them happen, but you can see, I don't know, Arsenal. In what they meet Arsenal in some round, and suddenly they concede 2 goals from set pieces, and then the jig is up, because they will not come back from that. Good attacking players though they've got. It is very exciting though, the amount of goals, notwithstanding the game in Monaco, flying in, absolutely amazing. We've still got an hour to go here on Trans Europe Express. That hour will also include, of course, our great friend Tim Vickery. Why don't you stick around with us here on the best European football radio show? Let me just go through the facts and figures in the world.
Life after football. For a lot of players, it means going into punditry. Some turn to coaching or working in the game in other ways. But what about the rest? Some former footballers turn their sights away from the game, and there are a few big surprises. First up, from rainbow flicks to pancake flips. Ex-Chelsea and Southampton defender Ken Monku switched up his footballing career to buy a Dutch pancake house. He bought out the shop, which had been his favourite pancake spot as a child, and before long he was mixing the batter and getting behind the stove. Next, Everton legend Thomas Gravesen swapped out the high stakes of the Premier League for those of the poker room. He made over 150 appearances for the Toffees and won the Scottish Premier League with Celtic. Turned out the Danish international was pretty darn good at poker. He racked up a reported £100 million from his Las Vegas adventures. Remember former Chelsea goalkeeper Petr Cech? Turns out football nets weren't the only goals he was pretty handy in front of. After retirement, he became a goaltender in ice hockey. Same skills, very different surface. And he even won a Division 2 title with Guildford Phoenix. For ex-Liverpool centre-back Daniel Agger, it wasn't just fancy footwork that was in his blood. He was also pretty good with his hands. The Denmark international turned to tattoo artistry after he hung up his boots. He'd qualified as a skin artist while at Anfield, and he then became the co-owner of his own tattoo company as well. It's not all glamour for ex-pros, though. 1966 World Cup winner Ray Wilson set up a very different kind of business. He became an undertaker after he retired. Finally, not many people can say they've won both a World Cup and starred in an Oscar-winning film. In fact, there's only one person in the entire world who can say that. Frank Leboeuf, the former Chelsea defender, was part of the 1998 France squad who won the World Cup. He ended up marking Brazil's Ronaldo in the final and helped his side to a 3-0 win. But Leboeuf had already begun acting on the side while he was playing football, and his biggest role came some years after his retirement when he landed the part of a doctor in the Stephen Hawking biopic The Theory of Everything.
I embrace the career of acting, so I want to learn more. So seeing lots of movies is a part of my job.
To be honest, with all the dramatic diving in the game these days, there's probably tons of ex-pros who've got the acting skills to make it in Hollywood.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. Third and final hour of tonight's historic edition of Trans-Europe Express. Historic because me, Danny Kelly, and my Oppo, Andy Brassell, are in the same building. He's in my house upstairs. And the reason I'm going to spin out this intro, the producer might be interested to hear, is because he's been in the kitchen making me a cup of tea. Well, the said cup of tea has just arrived. There it is for those of you, well, the millions of you watching on smart devices and television. Thank you very much indeed, Andy. Oh, I see he's back upstairs now. He's in situ. So we can continue in this hour. We'll be talking, as I say, we'll be getting stuck into football news from the USA, including a new contract that'll probably take to the end of his football career for Lionel Messi. The Europa and Conference League games that happened on Thursday, and he'll take you around the other leagues as well. It should be a belting 60 minutes. We're so glad you're along for the ride. Welcome one, welcome all, willkommen, bienvenue, vulture to every single one of you here to Trans-Europe Express. So let me see how I could be any happier. I'm in my own home, broadcasting to the world. My friend and colleague of nearly a decade here on Trans-Europe Express has just brought me a very decent-looking cup of tea. How could things get better? Oh, yeah, Tim Vickery might join us from South America. Good evening, Tim.
Very good evening. And I bring with me the burning question of the week, which is as follows. Igor Jesus, the new Brazilian centre-forward there at Nottingham Forest, is he, I wonder, is he more bemused by trying to understand the dulcet tones of his new manager, or by hearing some strange Slavonic sounds come out of the mouth of Andy Brassell? Very good evening, gentlemen. How you doing?
We're really, really well, Tim. And next time we try and repeat this already historic technical achievement of the two of us being in my house, you should come as well. We'll really go for it. Tim, where do we want to start? Let's talk. Well, we'll soon know the finalists for the Copa Libertadores, and perhaps contrary to expectations, it could be, perhaps in line with expectation, it might be an all-Brazilian final, but equally, and I think contrary to many people's prognostications, it could be a no-Brazilian final.
Oh, what a week we have in store with the second leg of the semi-finals. I mean, it looked absolutely bolted on because we've got the two Brazilian heavyweights. They've been the continental heavyweights for nearly a decade now. Flamengo of Rio, Palmeiras of Sao Paulo. But both of them have a little bit of work to do in the second leg. I think possibly the calendar hasn't done them any favours because they are the two teams in contention for the Brazilian Championship. The games come thick and fast, and they played each other last Sunday just before the first leg of the semi-finals. I think that maybe had a negative effect. Anyway, Flamengo, I was in the stadium for this one, against Racing of Argentina. Knocked on the door, and could only force one late goal, 1-0. They won. They've got to go back to Argentina Wednesday night. That stadium there of Racing is going to be absolutely kicking and pulsing. So they're going to have to administer that 90 minutes. It's a huge game, I think, for Jorginho, the former Chelsea, former Arsenal midfielder. Can he dictate the rhythm from centre field? Can he stop Racing getting ahead of steam? That could be really, really dramatic. And
Tim,
one which will be... Go on.
No, just to say about River and Buenos Aires, I'm going to say this, and I risk, I'm a Londoner, so I know one city that's a great footballing city with, 6 or 7 Premier League clubs just now? But honestly, there is no greater footballing city in the world than Buenos Aires, and I think you're right that, of course, not everyone in Buenos Aires has got 13 league clubs, supports River, but I can just imagine what the intensity of that stadium is going to be like.
Yeah, it's not River, it's Racing.
Racing, rather. I've gone mad.
In a way, it's even bigger because Racing haven't been, it's a historic old side, but they haven't had an occasion like this for a long, long time. And so it's huge. It's really, really big. So that's going to be a dramatic
one possibility
evening.
of an Argentinian finalist. Yep.
Indeed. The other semi-final, wow. Palmeiras, coached by the Portuguese Abel Ferreira. We've talked about him many, many times on the show. Very, very good coach indeed. Boy, did he get things unbelievably wrong for the first leg, away to Liga of Quito, or LDU, at Ecuador. So there's altitude there. Now, Abel's been around the block here in Brazil and in South America long enough to know these conditions. But he's got his selection, and this is something I thought I would never say about Abel Ferreira. He picked a side that was ludicrously attacking. I never thought those words would come out of my mouth. And I think the thing here is that he lost to Flamengo 3-2 last Sunday. And I think it was a message that he was sending to his players because he picked a very similar side. 2 up front, 3 in midfield, of only one of whom is a specialist marker. The right back, he went for the attacking option, not his more defensive right back, and it was an absolute shambles. It could have been done and dusted by half time. Liga were 3-0 up at half time. And obviously Abel then he has to chase around, trying to do 2 things, trying to keep the score down while getting a goal back. He managed to do one but not the other, and it finished 3-0.
Amazing,
yes,
Andy.
Indeed, yes. Liga are quite an old side. Lots of players on over half the side is the other side of 30. Now, when I've reached double that age, I'm going to say the right side of 30, but it's not something that we football journals usually say. And I don't think they might regret not really going for it to finish it off first leg, because now they've 90 minutes in front of the Palmeiras crowd will be a long 90 minutes. What they've got going for them is a fantastic defensive record against Brazilian sides. And I was in the stadium for the first round of the knockout matches. They were away to Botafogo, who won it last year, and they conceded after 13 seconds. They're 1-0 down after 13 seconds. They haven't conceded a goal since. And all the matches have been against Brazilian opposition. So it's basically, take off that 13 seconds, and that's 5 consecutive games against Brazilian opposition. They haven't conceded. If they can come up with something similar again, they are very, very much the shock finalists. And just to make this unbelievably stunning, I mean, you could fit their whole squad. You could pay for their whole squad for probably what you pay for Victor Roque's Tono, the centre forward that they brought back from Barcelona, and their top goal scorer in the group phase, a Paraguayan called Alex Arce, they sold him to Argentina. So they've done it without the top scorer. So it's an incredible story as it is.
Sorry, Tim, give us the full name of the club again.
They're usually referred to as LDU, Liga Deportivo Universitario. In Ecuador, they're referred to as Liga of Quito. So I think Liga is probably the best way to do it. Yes, so what a second leg we have there. It's going to be...
And tell me, Tim, because I know Andy's got loads of things to ask you, how much of a boost for South American football would it be if it wasn't the two Brazilian super giants in the final?
I will say at this point in time a lot, pending evidence of the final, because if the final's dreadful, maybe not so much. And there is, I think, even all around the continent, there is the idea of, Flamengo against Palmeiras will be something really, really special. So it would be a boost, but you might, I remember that when Chelsea knocked out Barcelona on the back foot, with that Ramirez scoring a goal. I remember here some people celebrating, because the Barcelona monopoly had been broken. And a fellow journo said to them, right, you people who are celebrating, you've got to sit in front of the final for the full 90, 120, however long it takes. That's your punishment. So it could be something similar, because a Flamengo-Palmeiras final would be really special. But, the rest of the continent hits back, and why not? So whatever happens, we win. If we win, we win. If we lose, we still win. We can't lose.
Tim, as Danny says, I've got so much I want to ask you this evening, but really I'm going to stick to just one thing after I've said that Igor Jesus said he misses you. What I really wanted to talk about is one of the stars you were talking about of the Under-20 World Cup, Gianluca Prestiani, who, as you said, was allowed to go, unlike a lot of other players, because he was out of the picture at Benfica. Extraordinarily, he's come back. Now, Benfica had a tough week in Europe, as we heard earlier. They beat Oroca 5-0 yesterday, which they really needed. Their biggest and best performance under Jose Mourinho since he's been back. And he picked his words very carefully afterwards, where he started the game, he scored, he had an assist, he played very well. It obviously meant a lot to him. And he said, thanks to Benfica for letting me go to the tournament and allowing me to rebuild my confidence. He could still be an asset for them, either playing or they could be able to sell him.
Yes, and he wasn't even in the Argentina side at the start of the tournament. He only got in because another player, the number 10, Montoro, got injured. If it wasn't for that, he'd have spent that tournament on the bench. Oh, the little deviations of fate that happen along the course of our lives. There is something there, I think. I really think he can be an asset to Benfica in one of the two ways that you mentioned, because he put himself right there in the shop window. He looks very, very promising indeed.
What about the Copa Sudamerica, the equivalent of the Europa League? Who will be who's in line to be the finest there, Tim?
It's advantaged the home sides this week. Last week, there was a kind of rebirth of Hulky, or Hulk, as people over there will call him, for Atletico Mineiro, who came off the bench and they got a late equaliser at altitude in Ecuador against the fascinating Independiente del Valle, who produce Moses Caicedo and half the Ecuador side. Atletico Mineiro, they are coached by Jorge Sampaoli. And I wonder about him. I mean, they're looking very poor, really, really poor, and they're looking over their shoulder for a relegation in the Brazilian Championship. And I just wonder with Sampaoli if his time has passed. Very much a Bielsa disciple. And so many of the things, the high press and that insane intensity that were once revolutionary have now become mainstream, and I just wonder where there is for him to go. But anyway, they've got a good chance of saving their season, getting through to the final. The other one was also a draw. Universidad de Chile at home to Lanús of Argentina. Lanús went 2-up. In the last few minutes, Lau came back to equalise in front of absolutely no one. That match is being played behind closed doors because Lau probably should have been kicked out of the tournament after their fans went on the rampage at Independiente in Argentina in an earlier round. Independiente got kicked out. Lau were able to stay in but have to play their games behind closed doors. No one's really sure because they've got quite a long ban of matches behind closed doors, both home and away. Does this apply to the final, assuming that they qualify? They'll have to win or draw and come through a penalty shootout in Lanús on Thursday night. But assuming that they qualify, they've got this long ban for not only home games but also away games. Does a neutral game count? Will they be able to take fans to the final of this showpiece occasion should they qualify? So perhaps the CONMEBOL officials will be hoping that Lanús come through and we have an Argentine side in the final of that one.
And Tim, finally, a quick word, and I'm sorry to say it's a quick word. A 10-woman Brazilian side beat much vaunted England in a friendly international in Manchester yesterday.
Yeah, huge morale boost 2 years away from hosting the World Cup. Started off like a train, first 20 minutes. High press, got behind Kira Walsh, Bia Zanerato, who's one of their star players, scored one, made one. That high press, it has a defect. You leave the space behind your defensive line. They lost a player sent off after 20. And after that, it was backs to the wall. A draw would probably have been a fair result. But they held on for a 2-1 win. Very, very morale boosting. They are building towards trying to win their first ever either world or Olympic title with home advantage, or will that be disadvantage? Watch this space in 2 years' time.
Tim, as always, a joy and a treasure. Thank you very, very much indeed. Tim Vickery there live from Brazil with all the latest from South America. Next, we'll be going further north on the great continents of the Americas. Talk to Brian Sciaretta about several things going on in the United States, not least a new contract at Miami for Lionel Messi that may well see the great man to the end of his professional football career. Yeah, there's NFL action later this morning where you can listen to the Green Bay Packers at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Huge game live on talkSPORT 2 almost immediately after our show because the clocks have changed. That's just after midnight. Live NFL on talkSPORT 2 just after midnight. Meanwhile, the game that's ongoing, I mean, anything could happen in the last 3 minutes, but I think it's not going to. Dallas Cowboys getting walloped in Denver. And while they're not out of it completely, it looks like another season where the sheer amount of emotion and money spent on the Dallas Cowboys, you could best describe it as squandered, because it doesn't look to me like they're going to be making the playoffs. They're getting beat by 44-24 right now in Denver. Andy, let's move on then to our next guest. We were talking to Tim in South America. Let's move to North America now. Brian Chiaretta is our US correspondent. He joins us now. Hi, Brian.
Hey, good evening, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Really, really good to talk to you. I suppose the first thing we should talk about, and there's much to talk about with Miami, is Lionel Messi, or Leo, as David Beckham likes to call him, signing a contract extension for the next 3 seasons that will keep the great man, well, in America to the end of his career. How important is this contract?
It's very important for a lot of reasons, broadcasting, and also for Inter Miami. They're building their new stadium, and it's very important to the team, the league, and the fans, and everything, the city. And they needed to have Lionel Messi lead this team into their new stadium and create all the momentum that they can. So, it was a deal they had to make happen, and we'll see. I think it's I think it's going to work out well for all parties involved.
I mean, Brian, tell us a little bit about this stadium move, because they're moving from Fort Lauderdale to downtown Miami. How does that affect the sort of demographic that follows into Miami? I mean, clearly, as you say, going into the new stadium, they had to have Messi there as the headline act, which I guess sort of explains this 3-year contract, because much as we all love Leo Messi, he doesn't currently look as if he has 3 seasons left in him. If we're being perfectly honest, maybe the last of those is going to be the gold watch. But in terms of the move, how will this affect supporters of Inter Miami, do you think?
I mean, I think it's going to be big. I mean, Fort Lauderdale and Miami they're close, but not that close. A lot of people have to travel up I-95, which is a mess, to go to their games. And, this allows them to play into shorter commutes for the most part. It gives them a better stadium experience, too, but based on, the one that they play in now it's nice, but it's not, anything what you want, like a world star to have. And look, they're going to spend more on other players, too. I know, Busquets and Alba are retiring. And there's going to be more top caliber players that they're going to be going into, that they're going to try to bridge the gap, really.
Actually, Brian, that was going to be my next question. I was going to ask, like, given that it was Messi and his mates, really, how does this affect the future of Inter Miami? As we said, he'll be leading them forward, but presumably it will be a lot younger team around him. But I guess if we're talking about extending Messi and getting the most out of the rest of his career, he does need more legs around him, right? And we saw that at the 2022 World Cup.
Oh, of course. Look, they have a lot of, they have spent a lot on younger players. It's not just the Albas and Busquets. They do have Argentine youth internationals and U.S. youth internationals and homegrowns and locally developed players, and all that stuff is good. They just don't draw the headlines. But yeah, they're going to want to continue to go that road. And look, as Messi gets older, the team's going to have to get younger. So you're absolutely right. I think the team is trending in the right direction. I think they know what they want to do. But like I said, they want to make this. They want to have all eyes on this new stadium. They want to have a load of momentum going into this thing. So yeah, they had to make this deal, and I think it's going to be great for their fan base. They're not going to have to commute as far, and then on terms of it, they're not going to have to get in their car right afterwards. They're going to get to stay at the stadium and maybe hang out in local restaurants and really make it a Miami experience, which is really what they've wanted to do for a long time, ever since they came back into the league.
Brian, to change the subject slightly, but to stick with Miami, really, that part of the world, the proposed La Liga game between Villarreal and Barcelona has now been stopped. I suppose Americans, who are forever trying to expand the horizons of, say, the NFL with games in Dublin and London and Rio and all the rest of it, will find it's very hard to believe the kind of parochial opposition to European games being played outside of their actual leagues. But has there been any reaction at all to the cancellation of that game?
You know, in covering the sport the way I do, I never really saw much enthusiasm for this, if you can believe it.
Oh.
Now, look, had they gone on, you know, and gone forward with it, maybe it would have started building momentum as we were getting closer. But, you know, people would want to turn out and see any kind of meaningful game. But I think when you saw the announcement and the negative wave of negativity in social media about this and local, you know, people follow the sport over there, they still watch the media over there, and it was all negative. I think most people understood that this is, you know, this game, Spanish games belong in Spain for a reason. You know, there's nothing, you know, trying to expand your global footprint is something that, like, I think, you know, can backfire in some way too, especially when, you know, every country in the world has its own leagues. It's not like the NFL bringing like a professional football to England. It's just where it doesn't exist at that level.
That's exactly that's the
Yeah.
huge difference. That is the huge difference. You know, when people when Jacksonville turn up in London, that is people's only chance to see top class American football in the flesh, live in a stadium. It's not the same for people in America. They've got the soccer. They, you know, and the whole thing just reeked. I mean, no, we know what it's for. It's about money and reach and all the rest of it. But there's so much more to football, and I'm very glad it's been stopped, at least for now. And of course, it means UEFA now have to go to say, we told you all along this was wrong, Brian. It's an absolute mess. Thank you very much indeed, as always, Brian, for bringing us a beam of light into the world of football in the United States. Brian Sciaretta there, everybody. I'm a regular fixture here on Trans-Europe Express, where next we'll be looking at what happened last week in the Europa League and the Europa Conference League. Right, listen up. It's our biggest competition yet. We're giving you the chance to play to win up to £100,000. As I say, talkSPORT's biggest cash prize ever, £100,000, completely tax-free. If you're the lucky winner, the excitement doesn't stop there. You'll also be coming to talkSPORT Towers on Thursday the 13th of November to play for that life-changing cash prize. Here, my friends, is how to enter.
18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word cash to 83338 and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or you can enter for free by calling 0330 880 3338. All entries must be received by the 6th of November at 4 p.m. This is a talkSPORT limited promotion run on talkSPORT, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Yeah, welcome back to Trans-Europe Express. I'm Danny Kelly. Andy Brassell is also here with me. And Andy, let's look now at, we talked about the amazing Tuesday and Wednesday in the Champions League. Some pretty interesting things went on as well in the Europa League and the Conference League. Let's start with the Europa League. And I guess the most eye-catching, given that we think the English teams are always favourites of both these tournaments because of the power of the Premier League, Go Ahead Eagles, my favourite name for a football team. Go Ahead Eagles of Deventer 2, Aston Villa 1. Wow.
And I think it's, rather than saying, oh, okay, it's a league stage game, it's a minor shock, I think you have to appreciate just how big this is for Go Ahead Eagles. Firstly, them winning the KMVB Becker, the cup last season was absolutely amazing. Of course, the coach who helped them win that, Paul Simonis, he got his big move to Wolfsburg off the back of that. So I don't think anyone's really expecting anything from them this season. And Melvin Burl, their coach, really spoke about it eloquently afterwards in the press conference. And he said, I'm not sure I've ever struggled to describe a football match as much as I have this one. You know, people thought it was hopeless. People thought it was impossible, but it's never hopeless because you always get a chance or some chances, and they took them really well. You know, the goals they scored were brilliant, and you know, particularly the winner I thought from Mats Dale was fantastic. It was a great move, and he spoke about it afterwards, the coach, and he said how he looked up to the stands afterwards and he saw Jan Willem van Dop, the sporting director, and he had tears in his eyes. He's just like, this is unbelievable. We cannot get our heads around this. And actually, that they went and won their league game. They played the late game, delayed, of course, because they played on Thursday night and they'd expended all that emotional energy. They were given that extra bit of help by the Eredivisie. They played the game against Excelsior and won today 2-0, which I think, especially after the Lord Mayor show, is quite an amazing achievement that they managed to do that, and they're in the top 10 again now. It's an incredible thing. And I think we can take for granted the difference in resources between Aston Villa and even a top club. You look at the way they put away Feyenoord on the road last time they're away in the Europa League Villa. And what Go Ahead Eagles have done is truly epochal.
You could argue the same, Andy, for perhaps a team we're more familiar with in and around the European tours. But Vittoria Pilsen won in Rome against a Roma team that are currently equal top of the Serie A.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Roma always managed to dig themselves this hole in the group stages. They were 2-0 down at half-time. They managed to pull one back, but Pilsen held on from the win. I think if you bear in mind that they lost their best player, Pavel Schultz, in the summer, who's at Lyon, where he's struggling to get into the team. The fact that they were knocked out of Europe by Rangers going back into the qualifying stage, again, it is an incredible effort.
Yeah, we should make the point at this stage, I think, that there are several teams in the Europa League have won all their games. Midtjylland, Braga, and, of course, Olympique Lyonnais, Lyon. You'll be pleased with that, Andy. Let's move then, because there's so many great stories. Let's move to the conference. I suppose the biggest shock there, and we've talked about Cypriot teams because of, obviously, the one that's in the Champions League, but Larnaca coming to London and beating Crystal Palace. Wow.
Yeah, it is an incredible effort. And I think especially when you look at the form that Palace have been in over the last little while, it's pretty amazing. And I guess it underlined, and I think we saw that in the interview of Full Time. I think it was Olivia Bazaglo who did it for TNT, asking Mark Gay the question that I really wanted to know the answer to. Is this something different that Palace are going to have to face in the Europa League, because in the Conference League, sorry, because you are probably the uber favourite of the competition. The fact that other teams are going to come and defend, and it's not something that Palace have been used to, really. Teams coming to them and
they tend to kind of spring back on teams when they've been defending, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a really great effort. But I think as well we have to give credit to not just to Larnaca, but Emmanuel Idiakes, who has been, as we spoke about last week, a coach who's been a huge part of Unai Emery's success at Villarreal, who got Deportivo La Coruña out of the Segunda B, which is well hard because finishing top of the table doesn't guarantee you promotion, as we've underlined before. You know, the Spanish third tier is really difficult to get out of, and especially with the pressure of managing a full-time club that's got big support. He did a great job there, even if he couldn't quite make it work in the second tier, where again there was still expectation. So for him to take a team again where there's an enormous gap between them in resources and do that, even if Palace are relatively inexperienced in European competition, yeah, kudos to him. It's fantastic.
And indeed, if Go Ahead Eagles can be very proud of their fantastic win, the same can be said about Larnaca, and the same many teams. But all of them have to say, hats off, we'll hold your coat to Lincoln Red Imps.
Yeah, it's a remarkable effort. Seeing a Gibraltarian side getting a win in...
Is it the first? I think it's the first one ever in Europe.
Yeah, it is.
Is that right?
It's remarkable.
In the league stages, yeah. Incredible.
Yeah, so they beat Lech Poznan, and they went 1-0 up, which was already remarkable. Were pegged back and still managed to go and find a winner. It's an absolutely extraordinary achievement, and this really is what the Conference League is supposed to be about. These sort of stories. So, incredible effort by them.
Yeah, and finally, I mean, later on in the show, I'm going to talk about Shamrock Rovers here in the Republic of Ireland again. But perhaps the most bitter game was the one between Shamrock in Dublin and Celje, or rather, the bitterness was between the coaches, Stephen Bradley and what's Riera's first name? Remind me, it's Albert.
Albert, yeah.
Albert Riera, the coach of Celje. They tore holes out of each other after the game.
Yeah, so it was particularly on Riera's side. Actually, he gave this extraordinary, bizarre press conference where he went on a massive rant about how Stephen Bradley had disrespected him, and then went on with obviously no knowledge of the background at all, how Bradley couldn't be a good coach because he'd never gone anywhere and he'd been at Shamrock for ages. Whereas I think we know there are very particular reasons why he stayed at Shamrock for a
family health reasons. Absolutely. Let's leave it at that for now.
It's pretty awful.
And if Riera didn't know, he should have known, because it's a pretty well-known story, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Stephen Bradley would otherwise be all over the place. Now, Stephen Bradley will be the subject of his team will be the subject of the last article in the roundup of the leagues that we're going to do in a few seconds' time here on Trans Europe Express. And while I'm doing that, at the very end of the show, those of you, the millions of you watching on smart devices, YouTube, etc., will see Andy. You'll hear his voice fade, and then he will come down the stairs, not tripping over, I hope, and he will join me here in the visual cornucopia that my office is, and you'll see that we are, in fact, together in the same room. Now, talkSPORT initially were against this because of technical things. How can you make that work? It would be a miracle. When we said we could, and we showed them that we could, they then said, We cannot insure the pair of you in the same building at the same time. European football would collapse. It's too expensive to insure you. Yeah, just a reminder, and I'll remind you again at the end of the show, that coming up next here on talkSPORT, when we've finished, is the best of the talkSPORT Daily, which includes none other than broadcasting superstar Andy Brassell and his sidekick Adrian Durham, ranking their most hostile atmospheres and stadiums from across Europe. You wouldn't want to miss that. That's coming up in about 15 minutes when we've finished entertaining the nation, indeed the world, here on Trans-Europe Express. Where, Andy, the hardest working man in show business, you now have to take us through some of the other leagues we haven't yet done before doing the daredevil act of joining me in my office so we can wave at the people who are watching us in vision. Let's start in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I've got my escape slide ready, and with that, while I'm at the cusp, I can tell you about the Feyenoord PSV game, which was a big one. We talked about Ajax getting back on the horse by winning at Twente with remarkably the same team that started the game at Stamford Bridge in the week. Oscar Glock scoring a brilliant goal in that. Of course, his involvement at Stamford Bridge curtailed by the fact that Kenneth Taylor got sent off, so they had to stick someone else on in replacement for him. But Feyenoord PSV, Feyenoord under Robin van Persie have been doing brilliantly. They were doing brilliantly at the back end of last season when we wondered whether the job was a bit too much for him. They've started this season fantastically well, and despite losing a couple of key players. But PSV have been riding the crest of a wave this week. Of course, that superb performance to polish off Napoli in the Champions League, putting 6 past them, and they won 3-2 at the Kuip this afternoon. Hat-trick for Ismail Saibari. Now, if you remember, if we go back a couple of weeks and we talk about the departure of Luc de Jong, who of course went to Porto, the injury to Ruben van Bommel, the son of Mark, who started the season absolutely brilliantly, and we thought, okay, this is a team that's set up purely to attack. How are they going to score goals from this point? Well, it's Peter Bosz. Of course, they're going to find a way to score goals. And funnily enough, Saibari, who's been in great form, who's superb against Napoli, who tends to come from these deeper positions to score. He's got great pace and he's tremendous running with the ball. Scored one of the best hat-tricks you will see. The first one where he does the soft shoe shuffle around the defender and smashes it in from the angle. Then the lob for the hat-trick goal to get them over the line. So obviously, how do they celebrate it in the Netherlands? Well, Voetbal International has described him as the next cash cow for PSV. Oh, the romance, eh? Wonderful to see. It could have been a romantic afternoon for Troy Parrott as well. AZ doing brilliantly at the moment. He got 2 in their 4-1 win, but he missed the chance for a hat-trick with a penalty that afterwards he apologised on telly for because he said it was so bad.
Well, he's doing great, isn't he? Let's go to Portugal then, Andy. And you don't want to talk about the matches, but you want to talk about a presidential election.
Yeah, and it's huge, the Benfica presidential election. Now, of course, this was one of the main sources of controversy when Jose Mourinho was given the job, because people were wondering, well, Rui Costa might be out of a job in a month and a half. Why is he going ahead with such a big appointment? Well, obviously to shore up his popularity. That was the obvious thing, right? And it might have partially worked because he won more votes than anyone else in the first round. Now, bear with me when I say first round, because it was a record turnout, load of different candidates, which obviously speaks for a fan base that's not entirely content with the way that Rui Costa has been running the club. A record turnout of 85,500 fans and members voting for the new president. Close enough between Rui Costa and his main competitor, João Noronha Lopes, who was someone who originally wanted to wait for Ruben Amorim to get fired by Man United and appoint him. Doesn't look like that's going to work out. And he has said he'll stick with Jose Mourinho whatever happens now to try and keep the club on an even keel. But they're close enough that, very much like in the French presidential election, they're going to have a runoff for second place now, which is quite exciting from a distance. But it was brilliant. The way that it was being broken down on Portuguese sports media was like, Rui Costa takes this district of Lisbon. Rui Costa takes Aveiro. Noronha Lopes takes Coimbra. Very, very exciting.
Well, I can see you're excited. You're bursting with excitement about it, which is very good. Andy, quickly, Turkey. 2 names of great familiarity to this programme, Mauro Icardi and Tammy Abraham.
Yeah, that's right. Of course, Galatasaray winning again this weekend, as we would expect to maintain their lead at the top of the league. 3-1 win over Göztepe, despite conceding a goal early on. Goals for Victor Osimhen and Mauro Icardi, of course, when he came on later. But a bit of a strange one for Tammy Abraham. Now, he scored during the week because there was some league action during the week while everyone was off playing European football. Of course, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer put an end to that, so Besiktas aren't involved in European football. They won 2-0 at Konyaspor in the week, and Tammy Abraham scored for the 3rd time in 5 games. And he was rewarded with a little trip to Kasimpasa. Now, this is not always thought of as a derby. I think a lot of people don't know where Kasimpasa is, but it's right in the middle of Istanbul. In fact, I think you can walk from Vodafone Park. I've walked it before, from Vodafone Park to the stadium where Kasimpasa play. It takes about 20-25 minutes walk. So I'm not imagining for a second that the Besiktas players walked it, even though that would have been ecologically responsible. They're 1-0 up. They got a penalty. Tammy Abraham took a terrible penalty that was saved. 15 seconds later, up the other end, Carlos Wink equalised. More points dropped by Besiktas.
which takes us then your last contribution before you make your famous trip to join me here. And what would be a very awkward visual, because you're going to have to kind of kneel down to be at the same level as me sat in this chair. But we know that our next favourite league, after whichever is your current favourite league, our second favourite league is always Bundesliga 2, the second level of German football, partially because it's so competitive and partially because there's so many huge teams down there. Oh, he's gone. Okay, well, he's actually gone too early there. I'm just going to tell you that Schalke are top of Bundesliga 2, the biggest club of all in that level. So there they are. We're going to end tonight with me telling you the story about what's happening in the Republic of Ireland. Please bear with me here. 5 weeks ago, Shamrock Rovers became the champions-elect. They will be winning their 5th title in 6 years. Almost nothing could possibly stop them. All that had to happen would be that Derry, the only team anywhere near them, that Derry would have to drop a point, or Shamrock would win or draw any one of their games in the last 5 weeks. Well, Shamrock have continued to lose games, and Derry have continued to win their games. And so the wait to go from champions-elect to actual champions has gone on for 5 weeks. Well, today the teams met up there in the northern part of Ireland, and Derry won by 2-1. So Shamrock are still not across the line. Now, they're still going to be champions because it will take Derry to win their last 2 games and by about 10 goals in the goal swings, and Shamrock to lose theirs. But I don't think I've ever remember a team standing on the line, the precipice, the cusp of glory for this long without getting across it. Okay, listen, I want to thank you all for the last 3 hours. Andy, come into the shot here so people can see where we are actually in this. There he is. Look at that. Now, obviously, people watching this will realise this is definitely one, not only is it historic, but it's one for the dark net, isn't it? Let's be honest about that. As I say, people looking for attractive human beings, please make a queue behind the velvet rope. Thank you all for listening for the last little while. Andy and I, when will you be back?
I will be back next Sunday with you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. In our poll, most of you, by a small margin, prefer to have Lamine Yamal than Kylian Mbappe in your team. Up next, it's the best of the talkSPORT Daily, including Andy and Adrian discussing hostile atmospheres. I'll be back on H&J tomorrow talking about the Premier League, which means after this amazing night with the two of us here in the same house, all it remains for me to say, as always, is thank you for listening to talkSPORT. Thank you for listening to Trans Europe Express. God bless you all, and good night.